Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto is gifted with Kekkei Genkai and holds the power of Torimu Yujuki Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Yugen Tamaru was nervous and worried. But you could hardly blame him for that, not with what was going on in Konoha tonight. He tensed as a figure dropped into the clearing with a sack over one shoulder, but relaxed when he recognized his teammate. She stood at about 5 feet 5 inches and was clad in standard Kumo Jounin attire, navy blue pants and shirt under a dark gray vest that was awarded to ninja upon the rank of Chunin. A Kumo hide was attached to her belt, over the buckle. She had a slender, athletic build and a beautiful face framed by jaw-length blonde hair. Her eyes were bright green and darted across the clearing, taking in her surroundings. Akana, I trust your part of the mission was a success. The kunoichi pushed an errant strand of hair out of her face before replying. Of course, the caretaker was a retired chunin, but aside from that there was no one with shinobi training watching over the boy. It wasn't even a challenge. Then we just need to wait for the ambassador to get back. I still can't believe it was this easy. Quiet, it's best not to tempt fate. They settled down to wait. They spent half an hour in tense silence, jumping at every snapping twig they heard. Eventually, Akana glanced up at the sky. Taking note of the position of the moon in relation to the stars, she determined the time. Reaching her conclusion, she turned to Tamaru. We need to go. Reikage-sama won't be happy about not getting the Hyuga. He'll be even less happy if he doesn't get the boy as well. The ambassador's late and may have been caught. If that's the case, then we'll be compromised as well. It's time to go. Tamaru opened his mouth to argue, but ultimately decided against it. Both Kumonin took to the trees, leaving no sign of their presence behind. 3 days later. Sarutobi let out a sigh. The 3 days since Kumo's failed abduction of the Hyuga heiress had been the most hectic since the Third Shinobi War. Word of the ambassador's death had reached Kumo quickly, most likely due to a messenger bird. Despite the circumstances, they had claimed that his death was a violation of the ambassador's diplomatic immunity, which was technically true, and had threatened war if not recompensated. Of course, it wasn't as though Sarutobi could just hand over Hyuga Hayashi, the head of his clan, for protecting his own daughter. The crisis had been averted when Hayashi's twin brother had offered to be killed in his place. Sarutobi hadn't liked the result, but Hisashi was insistent, claiming that many lives could be saved. It was situations like this, Sarutobi mused, that truly made the office of Hokage such a taxing position. Now that the crisis had passed, Sarutobi decided to pay Naruto a visit. He made a point of spending time with the boy. But when he got to the boy's apartment, something seemed wrong. After a brief moment, he realized that he was sensing a genjutsu. That was when Sarutobi began to get worried. He sent out a pulse of his chakra, dispelling the genjutsu and revealing kindling where the door should have been. His worry rose as he entered the apartment, and saw obvious signs of battle. Shuriken were embedded in the walls, furniture was destroyed, and burn marks were scattered everywhere. He hurried into the bedroom to see Rin sprawled unmoving upon the bed. He felt an initial moment of panic before examining her. Minato's student wasn't dead, merely incapacitated by a powerful genjutsu. He placed his hand on his forehead and dispelled it, causing Rin to bolt upright in bed. She wore a confused look on her face. Hokage-sama, where am I? I came to see Naruto. Instead I found a battle-scarred apartment. What happened here? Rin's confused frown only deepened. I don't know. I remember taking Naruto to see the parade at the celebration of our treaty with Kumo. Then I came back to put him to bed. Then my mind just goes blank. Sarutobi felt the weight of the world upon his shoulders as he closed his eyes and let out a sigh. 3 days ago, he said quietly, Kumogakure no Sato sent a delegation to sign a peace treaty with Konoha. Later that night, the ambassador was killed by Hyuga Hayashi while attempting to kidnap the clan's heir. We never found the 2 shinobi who accompanied him. One of them must have come here as well, for Naruto. I was too busy dealing with the repercussions of the attack to come visit, and I sent Kakashi out with the ANBU to secure the area immediately outside the village. We're the only 2 who have ever come to visit. They must have taken Naruto on the same night they attempted to take Hinata. And we were more concerned about making sure the other 2 Kumonin weren't in the village than sending out tracking parties to see if they had already fled back to Kumo. They have too much of a head start. There's nothing we can do for the boy now. 1 day later. Tamaru and Akana were glad to be close to Kumogakure no Sato. The early portion of their flight from Konoha had been tense as they expected ANBU pursuit. However, they never sensed any signs of pursuit. Not that they let that make them careless. They had kept up a frantic pace as they made their way back home. Rounding the last bend in the mountainside, they were shocked to see the Reikage waiting for them along with the usual Chunin guards. The Yondaime Reikage was an imposing figure, solidly built at standing 6 feet 2 inches tall. His intense blue scrutinized them from under the brim of his Kage hat, and his black beard was flecked with gray. His voice was soft, but was so commanding that everyone always seemed to stop and listen when he spoke. I see the two of you have made it back safely. I've heard that the third of your number was not so lucky. Reikage-sama, he was 5 minutes late to the appointed meeting spot. We assumed that he had been caught, and our position was compromised. We felt that returning to Kumo with the boy was our best option. I would have done the same in your place. The third member of your team was killed by Hyuga Hayashi as he tried to escape the clan's compound. I've been in contact with the Hokage and managed to make a small diplomatic issue out of it. They have pledged to send us the body of Hayashi as recompense. I find it more likely that we'll get his twin brother Hisashi, who has been branded by the caged bird seal. Luckily, however, the contingency plan succeeded. We may not get the Byakugan, but now we'll be able to create a new Kekkei Genkai. Tamaru, you may return home. Akana, follow me and bring the boy. It is time to begin the ceremony. He turned and strode urgently into the village, forcing the shorter Kunoichi to hurry to keep up. Reikage-sama, she asked as they navigated the streets, won't we have to worry about Konoha trying to take the boy back? I doubt it. As the container for the Kyuubi, he was hated by most of the village. Even though the Hokage seemed to like the boy, public sentiment will undoubtedly make it difficult for him to mount much of an effort to retrieve the boy, especially if it could lead to violence. He just won't have the support for it. Also, I managed to maneuver Konoha into making a concession to us. This leaves them in a rather poor position to try to demand custody of the boy even if the Hokage can get support for the move. He stopped outside of a building that was a simple stone dome. We're here. Wordlessly, the two stepped inside. The room was bare, without a single piece of decoration or furniture. The Reikage pressed a panel beside the door and a portion of the floor slid over, revealing a circular stairway that wound into the ground. The stairs opened into a large underground dome. A complex series of seals was engraved on the floor and a pair of pedestals rose from the floor in the center of the room. There were 16 shinobi waiting for them, 8 of the finest medic nin and fuinjutsu users that Kumogakuya had to offer. One of them looked up as the two newcomers arrived. Is that him? He asked, pointing towards the bag cradled in Akana's arms. Wordlessly, she handed it over. The man set it on the ground and removed the child within. He was a boy of 2, with tan skin and unruly blonde hair. There were 3 whisker marks on each cheek. The shinobi had heard that his eyes were blue, but couldn't tell as they were shut due to the boy's genjutsu-induced slumber. He nodded in approval. Bring her out. Another shinobi stepped forward holding a young girl. She was also asleep, and was dressed in a simple white robe. Her long blonde hair hung down her back in a ponytail, and her features had a distinct feline cast to them. The two shinobi brought the children to the center of the room, where they removed their clothes and placed them on the pedestal. Taking out brushes and ink, they proceeded to spend half an hour writing a complex series of seals on the children's skin. As they worked, they revealed another seal on the belly of each child, the seal that kept the bijou they held at bay. When they were done, they stepped back and formed a ring around the seals along with 6 other shinobi. As one, they raised their hands and began a long and complicated series of hand seals. The sequence was 172 seals long, and they all had to be performed in unison. It had taken hours of practice to get the timing down perfectly. 2 minutes later, the sequence done, the 8 shinobi kneeled down and slammed their hands onto the floor of the cavern. The seals instantly began to glow white. It started at the edges and worked its way inward, traveling up the pedestals and into the seals on the toddler's skin. The children began to glow as well. Yujito's glow was a violent purple while Naruto's was red. Slowly, their auras were leached by the seals. They were funneled down the podiums and ran through several seals on the floor, intermingling as they went. Eventually, they began making their way back to the 2 children. The colors had changed, that much was obvious as the auras crept back up the podium. Yujito's was now a vibrant yellow-orange while Naruto's was slate blue. The auras reached the children once more, and began creeping over their skin. As the auras crept forward, all of the seals they touched disappeared. Eventually they completely encompassed the children, leaving them unmarked. Even the seals that had contained the bijou were gone. Then the auras began sinking into the skin, forming a complex series of tribal markings. At the conclusion of the ritual, the markings faded from sight. The ritualists collapsed in exhaustion, then signaled that they were finished. Immediately, the medic nin rushed forward. After clothing the children in simple white robes, they began performing diagnostic jutsu. After several minutes of tests, they conversed quietly amongst themselves. When they were done, the Reikage walked over. Well? The ritual was a success, Reikage-sama. The bijou are gone, most likely sent back to the demon plane for now. And the Kekkei Genkai seems to have been formed successfully. The children are in fine health and there are no undue signs of strain on their chakra coils. The Raikage let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. And their chakra capacity? As you know, Yujito was chosen to contain the Nibi because she had naturally high chakra reserves. I suspect it was the same in the boy's case. The sealing of the bijou caused an increase in their reserves in order to allow them to contain the Yuki. Since then they have been growing at the same proportion as that of an average child and will likely continue to do so. However, due to their higher chakra capacity, their growth will dwarf that of other children if measured on an absolute scale. Currently, they have low Jounin level reserves. Very well, he raised his voice so it echoed throughout the chamber. I would like to thank you all. You have performed admirably and the village will prosper from your actions. The surname of these children shall now be Araiki, and they will help found a clan that will strengthen our village. He handed Yujito to the medic Nin who had spoken to him. You will return Yujito to her home. The rest of you, except for Akana, are dismissed. The assembled shinobi bowed out of respect before filing up the stairs. Soon only the Raikage, Akana, and the young boy remained in the room. Raikage-sama, I assume you have another task for me. In truth, Akana wanted to go home and sleep. The mission had worn on her both mentally and physically. But she was determined not to show that in front of the Raikage. You are correct, he turned and held the boy out to her. I want you to raise the boy, his name is Naruto. Akana stood for a moment in mute shock. Are you sure? Wouldn't it be best to raise him with Yujito? No, I want them to grow close over time, of course. But I do not want them to view each other as siblings. I have had my ANBU observing the female Jounin of this village for the past few months. Based on their information, I have determined that you are best suited to raise the child. Besides, I have heard that you were considering adoption. Akana's hand unconsciously moved to the scar on her hip as she mulled over the Raikage's statement. He was right. After that wound, she had been told that she would be unable to conceive her own child. She had been considering adoption, and now was as good a chance as any. She reached forward with trembling hands and gathered the young boy into her arms. I accept Raikage-sama. Good. You will receive a stipend to cover his living expenses, as well as any equipment he needs. He will begin his training at age 4 along with Yujito. Since they are the first to have their Kekkei Genkai, they will work with many Jounin of the village to unlock it, and to discover a fighting style that suits it. And one more thing. If you see anyone attempt to harm him outside of training sessions or tests, even myself, you are authorized to use as much force as you deem necessary to protect him. Hi, Raikage-sama. Very well, you are dismissed. Akana bowed, then turned and ascended the stairwell. Once she had exited the building and its restricting seals, she raised one hand in a basic seal and returned to her home through a quick series of shunsins. Deciding to pick up baby supplies tomorrow, she tucked Naruto into the bed in her guest room. Touching a finger to his forehead, she dispelled the genjutsu and allowed him to sleep peacefully. She stared down at him tenderly. Araiki Naruto, my son. She leaned down and kissed him lightly on the forehead. Sleep well, little one. 10 years later. Akana was observing, spying on, Naruto and Yujito as they walked down the road. The pair drew approving glances and whispers from just about everybody they passed on the street. The village had been infatuated with them for the past 10 years. It was admirable that neither of them had let the attention go to their head, especially since most of it was due to the fact that they possessed a new Kekkei Genkai. Although, there were several people that they had impressed with simple hard work. The pair had gone through intense training during the past 8 years. With a bit of help, they had managed to unleash their bloodline. After that, its advancement became mainly instinctual. That instinct had helped Kumo's taijutsu master to develop a complementary taijutsu style with them, which had named Yusiken. They had also been trained extensively in other tactics and strategy. The mother in her was proud of them. The mother in her, a phrase that Akana never thought she'd be using to refer to herself just 10 years ago. She had had her doubts when she was given Naruto to adopt, but in the end was happy for the opportunity. Sure, the energetic little blonde could be a handful at times, and it had been especially rough when his origins had been revealed to him at the age of 5. He had refused to speak with her or the Raikage for a week afterwards. He had gotten over it eventually, and was even grateful when he settled down a bit. He had been freed from the life of a Jinchuriki after all. Most importantly, he still viewed Kumogakure as home. He had grown up fast though, already taking the genin examination. She looked ahead almost wistfully, watching Naruto and Yujito walk down the road in front of her. Naruto wore standard navy blue shinobi pants, with slate blue stripes along the seams. He wore a short-sleeved shirt of steel mesh under a sleeveless gi. It was the same navy blue as his pants, with a tracery of tribal symbols and slate blue along the edges. Their design was derived from the pattern of the markings she had seen on him years ago, the hallmark of their bloodline. On the back, also in the same shade of blue, was the Araiki clan symbol that the Raikage had designed embroidered in raised thread. It was the slitted eye of some beast. only instead of being outlined in smooth lines, they were composed of the same patterns as those markings. It looked powerful, majestic, and feral. The Reikage had said it was a perfect fit for the Kekkei Genkai, which he dubbed Torimi Yujuki. The GI, along with Yujito's top, had been a gift from the Reikage last year on the 9th anniversary of the creation of their Kekkei Genkai. Yujito was walking alongside him. Her outfit was also primarily navy blue, though there were a few key differences. Instead of pants, she wore a pair of shorts that cinched tight just below her knees, leaving the lower halves of her legs were wrapped in bandages. Her torso was covered by a garment resembling a sleeveless kimono top of navy blue. The traceries and clan symbol were evident on her shirt, though they were in a yellow-orange color. Her long blonde hair was done in a braid that reached to her lower back and was wrapped in bandages. Both kimonin had a shuriken holster wrapped to their thighs, and neither wore footwear of any kind. The two were talking animatedly about something as they walked hand in hand down the road. They had been dating for a few months now. The Reikage's efforts to push the two together had proven to be largely unnecessary. They had been close ever since they met each other at a young age. Naruto had been incredibly dense though. The boy hadn't even recognized the depth of his own feelings, let alone Yujito's. At least he not until she kissed him. Akana chuckled as she recalled that memory. The two young shinobi were lounging in the treetops of one of Kumogakure's parks, listening to the sounds of children playing beneath them. What they didn't know was that Akana was nearby. Occasionally she grew curious as to what they were doing and decided to take a peek. So long as they didn't have their bloodline active, she could avoid detection without too much difficulty. She spied less frequently as time went on and the two became better able to take care of themselves, but she had a feeling today would be too good to miss. She had noted Yujito's posture and tone of voice when she asked Naruto to accompany her to the park. Her interest was plain, at least to everybody but Naruto, and she seemed to have grown tired of being subtle. Yujito waited until Naruto looked over the side of the branch at the children before speaking. "Hey Naruto, have you ever thought about what it would be like to have children?" "No, not really. I know that the village will want children from the both of us to pass on to Rimi Yujuki, but it'll be a while before we can consider that." "True, you'd have to worry about a girlfriend first." "Yeah, but too many of the girls in this village fawn over me just because of the bloodline. I'd want someone who wants me for who I am. You're the only one that does, but..." "But what?" Naruto froze. The tone of her voice told him that something was out of the ordinary. He turned to see that she had climbed to her feet and was slowly walking towards him with a perfectly neutral expression on her face. He scrambled to his feet and began to slowly back away. "But what, Naruto-kun? Am I not suitable dating material? Not pretty enough perhaps, or you don't like my personality?" Naruto's back bumped into the trunk of the tree as Yujito continued forward. "Well, what is it?" It's just that, why you've never seemed to see me that way and..." Naruto's voice trailed off as Yujito's face broke into an amused grin. "You really can be so dense sometimes." Naruto's eyes widened. "Yumea." Yujito made a small sound of impatience in the back of her throat. "Sometimes you just talk too much." Before Naruto could respond, she pressed herself forward and kissed him. She savored the kiss for a few minutes, reveling in the feel of him, his taste, and his scent. She broke off the kiss reluctantly, turned and walked slowly to the end of the branch. "Yujito-chan? You're picking me up at 5 tomorrow?" "What?" "For our first date, and it better be good." With a satisfied smirk on her face, Yujito leapt from the branch, quickly making her way back home. Naruto smiled widely as he entered the classroom. It was finally here, his last day in the academy. He and Yujito had been taught by private tutors for as long as they could remember. By the time they were allowed to enroll in the academy at the age of 8, they had already learned practically everything that the place taught. The pair had wanted to skip the academy altogether, but the Reikage and their parents had been adamant. It would do them good, they said, to interact more with their peers. That, and they didn't want to make it look like the duo was being shown favoritism just because of their bloodline. Soon after stepping through the doorway, he could feel the familiar sensation of having far too many females focusing on him at once. Though at least since he had started dating Yujito, or at least since she had knocked one of the more persistent ones into a state of semi-consciousness, they had stopped flirting with him so blatantly. The buzz of talking in the classroom died down as the Chunin instructor stepped to the front of the class. Satoru-sensei was slightly on the short side, standing at about 5 feet 6 inches. He was solidly built with a gruff voice and bald head. As usual, he was dressed in standard Chunin attire for Kumogakure. The class respected him greatly. Rumor had it that he could become a jounin easily if he didn't like teaching so much. He cleared his throat and projected his voice throughout the room. "Listen up!" The few students who had still been talking stopped immediately. Satoru smirked. Teaching his class discipline and respect had been worth it, It was just a shame that they'd be graduating so soon. Today myself and 2 other instructors will test you to see if you're worthy of becoming shinobi of Kumogakure. The test will have no written stage. If you didn't know the basic information required by the academy, you never could have made it this far. The first 3 segments of the exam will be outside. You'll be tested on stealth, accuracy with thrown weapons, and taijutsu. Then we'll come back inside for the ninjutsu portion of the exam. The results will be averaged, and you need at least a 70% to pass. If you get below 60 in 2 or more portions of the test, or below 50 in 1, you will fail. Are there any questions? The class remained perfectly still. After waiting several seconds, he spoke up again. Good, then follow me outside and we'll begin. The class followed their sensei to a wooded area behind the academy. The accuracy test was easy, almost no one got below an 80. The stealth test was more difficult. The taijutsu test was as well, and consisted of a spar against Satoru. Then the class was brought back inside and required to perform the kawarimi, henge, and bunshin. Though Yujito and Naruto instead used the Saitiki Bunshin no Jutsu because of their large chakra capacity. Overall, the vast majority of the class passed, with Naruto and Yujito at the top. The class now sat, with highlights tied around various body parts, as they awaited their team assignments. Yujito and Naruto were seated side by side, highlights around their foreheads. Satoru stood at the front of the class and began a speech. I would like to congratulate you all. By graduating from the academy, you have taken your first steps on the path of the shinobi. You are now Genin, official shinobi of Kumogakure. It's not the most glamorous rank, but you have to start somewhere. With perseverance and hard work, you should be able to reach the rank of Chunin, and eventually Jounin. Your futures lie ahead of you, and it's up to you to steer them where you want them to go. Now for team assignments. Naruto and Yujito sat patiently, waiting for their names to be called. Eventually they heard, Team 4 will include Araiki Naruto, Araiki Yujito, and Gifu Maitoku. Your Jounin instructor is waiting in room 307. Naruto looked over towards his other teammate as they walked to meet their sensei. Maitoku stood about an inch and a half shorter than his own 5'2", making him about the same height as Yujito. The boy had already attached the metal plate of his hideout to a black bandana that he wore over his brown hair. He wore black shinobi pants and sandals, along with a steel-gray jacket worn unzipped in the front. There was a yellow shirt under the jacket, along with a pair of straps that formed an X across his chest. His stormy gray eyes continuously swept the area. He wore a katana on his back, along with twin kodachi at his hips. There was a kunai holster attached to each thigh, and numerous extra packs of shuriken and saban were at his belt. As one could guess from his appearance, Maitoku utilized weapons heavily. He preferred to use his projectiles from a distance, but was also skilled with his swords. To make him even more dangerous, he was proficient in right-hand jutsu and frequently used them to charge his weapons. Blocking them would often prove painful. Overall, he was a nice fit. His ranged attacks could keep enemies engaged at a distance, while Naruto and Yujito could clean up anybody that got too close. The boy was sharp, and by no means gregarious. Whenever he spoke, it was generally a good idea to listen. Naruto's musings were cut short as they arrived at the door to room 307. Well, he muttered, let's see who we've got. He pushed open the door, revealing Akana laying on the desk while absent-mindedly tossing a kunai into the air. She turned her head as she heard the door open, and the kunai stuck into the wood a fraction of an inch from her nose. Ka-san! What are you doing here? Akana raised her legs, then flipped herself onto her feet as she replaced the kunai in her holster. I'm your Jounin sensei, of course. Why else would I be here? You were assigned as our Jounin sensei. But you raised me, and just because I've raised you doesn't mean that I can't be your Jounin sensei. And I know more about your Torimu Yujuki than any Jounin in the village. It's a rather logical choice, actually. Now, meet me at training ground number 8 in 10 minutes. Normally, you'd receive another test to determine if you'd actually become Genin. However, I've spent enough time with Yujito and Naruto to know how it would turn out. So instead I'll be holding a skills evaluation to see how good your teamwork is. She shined away with a crackle of static electricity. Naruto buried his face in his hands. I can't believe this, Ka-san, our Jounin sensei. What did I do to deserve this? Come on, Naruto-kun, it can't be that bad. Naruto raised his head and gave Yujito a very level look. Would you want your mom to know about every single little mistake you ever made on a mission? Keep in mind that she would then proceed to bring them up constantly around the house, never letting you forget them. Okay, point taken. But there's a good side to this too. You know you'll have a dedicated, hardworking sensei who'll do everything she can to keep us alive. That, and she's normal. Imagine if you had that spandex guy from Konoha we've heard about. Naruto shuddered. The stories he'd heard about that man were awful. He did suspect they were exaggerated to some extent, but still, He never wanted to find out if his suspicions were correct or not. I guess. Well, let's get to the training ground and get this assessment over with. Moving across the rooftops, Team 4 made it to the training ground in about 6 minutes. Akana looked up as they arrived. Good, you're all here. Now let's see what you can do. She seemed to suddenly disappear from view as she sped towards her Genin team. Naruto cursed. He hadn't been caught by surprise and could tell that Yujito hadn't either. But Maitoku had not been expecting this, and Akana directed her first attack at him. Naruto leapt in front of the boy, bringing his arm around to parry his mother's kick. The move left him off balance and vulnerable, allowing Akana's second attack to send him flying away. Akana got to Yujito just as she was trying to pull Maitoku back. In short order, both genin were sent flying away. Akana stood calmly in the center of the clearing, while her team was scattered around the edges. Well, I'm waiting. Hey Yujito-chan, Naruto lowered himself onto all fours as he spoke. It looks like it's time to activate Torimi Yujuki. Yeah, she muttered as she went down on all fours as well. Maitoku, stay back and wait for an opening. Naruto and Yujito brought up their chakra, and soon enough felt a familiar heady rush as their bloodline activated. They both grinned. It was time to fight. Half an hour later, Akana was casually standing in the middle of the clearing, appearing no worse for the wear, although that was partially due to a genjutsu. Her 3 students were scattered across the battle-scarred clearing in exhaustion. Akana herself was doing well to hide her own exhaustion. Sure, she was an elite jounin, but Naruto and Yujito were at least high chunin level and had excellent teamwork. Maitoku wasn't that bad either. I'm impressed. Naruto, Yujito, your teamwork together was as flawless as I've come to expect. Your timing was a bit off whenever Maitoku attacked, but your tactics were sound and the timing will come with time and experience. You're dismissed for now. Meet me back here at 8 tomorrow morning for training. Then after lunch you'll be introduced to the wonderful world of D-rank missions. 2 weeks later, Team 4 was absolutely sick of D-rank missions. Naruto thought Maitoku had phrased it perfectly when he called them menial tasks more befitting of servants than trained shinobi. Only one of the missions required any shinobi skills at all, trying to catch the falcon that belonged to the Lightning Daimyo's son. Why couldn't the man figure out how to tie that bird to its post? They had gone after it 6 times in 2 weeks. They were currently in the Reiki's office after just having returned the bird to its owner. He was ecstatic to have it back, though slightly curious as to why it seemed so twitchy. Team 4 decided not to mention that Maitoku had taken the thing out of the air with some electrified ninja wire. I must say I'm impressed. That was the fastest I've ever actually seen somebody catch that bird. The amused glint in the Reiki's eyes hinted that he had figured out their method. Now, he said as he pulled out a large folder of D ranks, let's see what I can give you for your next mission. Oh hell no! The Reikage looked up at Naruto and his voice took on a bemused tone. You have something to say, Naruto? Yeah, Yujito-chan and I were bored out of our minds in the academy learning stuff we already knew because you wanted us to have more social interactions. Then when we finally graduate, all we get for missions are chores. Are we shinobi or errand boys? Come on, give us a real mission. You know we're ready for it. The Reikage straightened in his chair, sliding into his business mode. Very well. He reached down and retrieved a folder from the top drawer in his desk. A drug cartel has been expanding its influence in the capital city of Rai no Kuni. Recent intelligence has revealed that he will soon be taking a short vacation with roughly 12 Ronin guards. Your job is to neutralize him. The daimyo would prefer that you kill the Ronin guards, although it is acceptable to allow them to flee if you're forced to. Your primary objective is the drug lord. The daimyo would like him alive for interrogation. You do, however, have permission to kill him if necessary. Do you accept this mission? The 3 genin nodded enthusiastically, and Akana offered no objection. Very well, he said as he handed the folder to Akana. You'll be leaving tomorrow for the southwestern corner of Rai no Kuni. Your sensei will brief you on the mission details as you travel. Dismissed. Naruto started a countdown in his head after the Reikage door swung shut. 3, 2, 1, duck. He put his head down, barely avoiding Yujito's slap to the back of his head. You should show more respect for the Reikage, Naruto-kun. But Yujito-chan, he was expecting one of us to do that. She narrowed her eyes. What makes you say that? The Reikage doesn't keep mission assignments in the top drawer of his desk. Naruto allowed himself a smirk at the expression on Yujito's face. It wasn't often he could get her to realize that she was wrong, mainly because she never seemed to want to admit that he was right. Naruto, he was instantly on alert by the sickly sweet tone to his mother's voice. The Reikage may have been expecting you to try this, but if you ever do that again, I'm putting you through 4 hours of brand new hell drills. Naruto shuddered. Hell drills had been developed after Yasiken. They were a chain form of several hundred attacks and blocks that should take no more than a few minutes. He would then perform the form, and if he made a single mistake at any point of the form, he'd have to start all over. And when you were learning a chain of moves that long, you tend to make quite a few mistakes. Yes, Ka-san. Good, you're all dismissed. So go home and start packing. The next day Naruto was really regretting having his mother as a jounin sensei. Naruto, did you remember to pack extra kunai and shuriken? Yes, Ka-san. Did you remember to pack your sleeping bag? Yes, Ka-san. Did you remember to pack a spare pair of sandals? Yujito-chan and I don't use footwear. Oh, right. For a few seconds it seemed as though she'd actually leave him alone. Did you remember to pack your underwear? Ka-san, if you wanted to see if I packed everything, why didn't you go over this last night before we left? Because it's a mother's sacred right to embarrass their child, especially in front of their romantic interests. Yujito's sudden fit of giggles didn't help Naruto's mood much either. He slowed his stride, dropping behind Akana and grumbling under his breath. It was going to be a long trip. Overall, the trip was enjoyable. Akana eventually stopped embarrassing Naruto, leaving him in peace to observe the scenery. Rai no Kuni was a ruggedly beautiful country. Much like Tsuchi no Kuni, it was covered in mountains. But where Tsuchi no Kuni was dry and barren, Rai no Kuni received much more rain and was covered in lush forests. Their journey brought them alongside deep gorges, took them under the shade of century-old trees, and gave them views of thousand-foot waterfalls. It was said that Rai no Kuni was the most beautiful place in the elemental countries, and none of the Kumo shinobi had seen anything to dispute that. Roughly 3 days later, Team 4 had pulled within sight of their target. Seeing that the small caravan was moving at a civilian pace, they decided to pull ahead a bit and set up camp. Once that task was finished, Akana gathered her genin together to discuss their strategy. Okay, I know that this is a fairly simple assignment that shouldn't give us much difficulty. But what you have to keep in mind is that nothing is necessarily as easy as it seems. So while we probably could just rush in and kill everybody, we're going to be more careful about this. During the day, Naruto and Yujito will sleep. When twilight starts, the two of you will move out and gather information about our target. I'm choosing you two because your bloodline will be of assistance in reconnaissance, which probably also means you'll be doing it a lot in the future. Maitoku and I will sleep during the night, which leaves a period of time during the morning and evening when we're all awake. During that time, we'll continue moving our camp forward along our target's path. Additionally, during the morning you'll tell me what you found out about our target the previous night. Now, let's get the tents pitched so our scouts can get some sleep. The shinobi got to work, each pitching a small one-man pup tent. After the tents were pitched, Naruto and Yujito crawled into theirs before promptly falling asleep. Some time later, Naruto found himself shaken gently awake. Opening his eyes, he saw Akana staring down at him. Time for you two to go, I already got Yujito up. She handed him a slip of paper. This is a tracking seal. I have the other half of it, so by focusing your chakra into it you'll be able to find our camp after we move. There's also an alarm seal on the other side. If you focus your chakra into it, I'll know and I'll be coming at a dead run. Naruto took the slip and tucked it into a pouch on his belt. Thanks, Akana-sensei. Well, Yujito looks like she's ready, so we should probably get going. See you in the morning? Naruto, he stopped. Akana's voice had been softer, more worried. For the moment she was speaking to him as his mother, not his sensei. I know you have the skills of an accomplished shinobi. I've spent the last 8 years drilling them into your head. And I know you have your bloodline to help you. But what you don't have is experience. Life or death situations are always hard the first time, no matter what the skill difference is between opponents. On this scouting mission you and Yujito might face one, and I won't be there to help you. So be careful and remember, if it does come down to a life and death situation, just remember that it's your or them. At that moment, it's all that matters. There's no time to worry about their death, about morals, or about innocence lost. An instant of hesitation is all it could take for either of you to lose your life, and I don't know what I'd do if I lost you. So please be careful. The two spent a moment in silence. Akana was usually an upbeat and jovial person. It had been a while since even Naruto, as close to her as he was, had seen this side of her. Don't worry, Kasan. I won't put any of my precious people through the pain of losing me if I can help it. That's a promise, and you know I never go back on my word. Akana cracked a smile. Her son always seemed capable of cheering her up. Good luck then, and stay safe. She watched as Naruto flashed her his trademark grin before running off to join Yujito. The two conversed quickly before leaping into the trees and disappearing from sight. Naruto and Yujito had been tailing the drug lord and his guards for about an hour now. The pattern was fairly simple. 3 guards took point. Another 4 hung back by 3 wagons which contained the drug lord and, probably, supplies. 3 more of the Ronin formed the rearguard while the remaining pair scouted the area. Eventually they pitched camp for the day. The wagons were drawn in close and the horses picketed. A pair of Ronin stood watch while the others unloaded supplies from the wagon. The first tent they pitched was enormous, obviously belonging to their target. They proceeded to pitch 6 more tents, all a great deal more practical than the first. Once camp was set up, they started a fire and cooked dinner. Afterwards, they unloaded some bokken and sparred with each other. Naruto and Yujito watched the spars closely, gauging the Ronin's skill. They quickly surmised that although they were quite skilled for regular humans, they'd be no match for trained shinobi. Eventually, the camp settled down for the night. 8 of the Ronin went to sleep. The other 4 stood watch, 2 at the perimeter of the camp and 2 beside their leader's tent. It had been over 2 hours since the camp had gone to sleep, and nothing of interest had happened. Naruto was sitting cross-legged on a tree branch. Yujito was sprawled out in front of him, head resting on his lap. "Naruto-kun, have you thought much about our mission?" Her voice was soft, hesitant. It was a far cry from the usual tough, self-assured face she presented to the world. "You mean about killing for the first time?" She shifted a bit, snuggling deeper into his comforting presence. "Yeah." Naruto started stroking Yujito's hair. He had learned years ago that it was one of the best ways to calm her down and comfort her. She was a lot like a cat at times, not that he should find that too surprising. "It's like Ka-san told me, I guess. Kill or be killed, no time to think about anything else. But I somehow doubt it'll actually be that easy. I've been told it gets easier, so we just have to get used to it, I guess. That's the part that worries me. I don't want to grow cold or callous. I don't want to be jaded. And I don't want you to change like that either." Naruto leaned back and thought a bit before replying. "Does Ka-san seem jaded to you?" "What kind of question is that? She's one of the most light-hearted people I know." "Yeah, and she can kill without blinking. It's something we'll get used to, something we'll adapt to. But it won't change who we are." Yujito grinned up at him. "Promise?" "I promise, and you know I always keep my word." "Yeah, you always do." She wiggled into him a little closer, then just allowed herself to relax and take comfort in his familiar presence. It was times like this that always made her grateful she had gotten him to date her. The rest of the night was fairly uneventful. Watch was changed every 3.5 hours, giving each guard 7 hours of sleep. The camp woke in the morning and cooked breakfast before hitching pack animals to the wagons and moving out. They took up the same travel pattern as before. Satisfied that they had seen enough, Naruto took out the tag Akana had given him and concentrated briefly. Then the pair leapt off through the trees to give their report, get some food, and catch some welcome shut-eye. The following night found the 2 trailing the miniature caravan once more. At first, everything was the same as it was the night before. They used the same travel pattern, set up camp the same, cooked dinner. There were no noticeable differences, at least not until after dinner. A few guards climbed into the rearmost wagon. They emerged a few minutes later, each with a scantily clad, bound woman over their shoulder. Naruto crushed his initial urge to charge into the camp, and placed a restraining hand on Yujito's shoulder to make sure she didn't make a similarly rash action. Naruto pulled the tag from his pocket and channeled chakra into both sides. Yujito leaned over and whispered into his ear, "How long?" "If they move at Mitoka's speed, which would be my guess about 5 minutes. Yujito glanced down at the men in the camp, who seemed to be working themselves into some sort of frenzy. "What if that's not fast enough?" Naruto's eyes hardened, and his face took on as frightening of an expression as she had ever seen from him. "Then we go in anyways." The next few minutes were the most trying of either of their lives. They crept closer so they could arrive sooner if necessary, and could hear the men's drunken laughter. Naruto finally had enough when he saw a few guards pull a woman to the ground and hold her spread-eagled. "That's it, Megarishi no Torimyu." He felt a sudden rush as he tapped into a familiar power. Slate blue tribal markings appeared on his skin, spreading outwards from his tenketsu. There were few of them on his face, but the ones present accentuated his whisker marks and gave him a more fox-like appearance. He could feel the transformation in his hands and feet. Nails lengthened and sharpened, turning into deadly weapons. Power surged through him as his bloodline granted him speed and strength, but not quite as much speed as he wanted. He called out again, hearing Yujito's voice along with his. "Shirtai no Torimyu." The markings on his arms and legs pulsed, and his limbs began emitting shimmering slate blue energy. Beside him, Yujito had gone through similar transformations. The only differences were that her markings and aura were a yellow-orange, and that they made her seem more cat-like. Naruto's shout served its purpose, distracting the Ronin from the women. They turned to see Naruto and Yujito streak out of the woods, moving faster than anything they had ever seen. Naruto burst through the startled ring of Ronin before they even had a chance to react. He didn't even slow down as he picked up the woman on the ground, tearing her from the grip of her captors. Yujito followed a beat later, grabbing the two remaining women. Both shinobi made straight for the other side of the circle, intent on bringing the women to safety before dealing with the Ronin. Only one Ronin managed to react in time, dropping his left foot back and drawing his sword in a Batajutsu attack. Naruto grimaced as he saw it. The man had timed it well. He couldn't avoid it without exposing the women he was holding to the hit. He jumped and twisted, meanwhile growling out the name of his next state. Mantore no Torimu. Naruto's visible markings pulsed again, and more of the slate blue chakra poured out of them. It surrounded him in a layer about half an inch thick on average, and formed the outline of a fox. Once formed, the mantle of chakra seemed to solidify. Unlike most displays of chakra impressive enough to be visible, there was no constant movement. It stayed relatively still, moving only as Naruto did. The Ronin's katana came down towards Naruto's back when the chakra suddenly moved, sliding off to one side. The chakra mantle, combined with the oblique angle Naruto had shifted into, deflected most of the force from the katana strike. Instead of cutting deeply into his back, it served only to carve a long but shallow gash in his back. He felt a flash of blinding pain at the cut. But he didn't even flinch, didn't let it ruin his concentration. He completed his spin, and essayed the woman on the ground while still in midair. He landed in a crouch, leaning forward. His left hand was planted on the ground while his right was cocked back, claws spread. No sooner had he landed than he leapt forward again, springing at the Ronin with the bloody sword. The doomed man launched another slash, but to no avail. Naruto's arm, still protected by his Mantore no Torimu, swept around in a circular parry and knocked the blade harmlessly aside. For a second, Naruto's world seemed to slow to a crawl. He was aware of the shrinking distance between him and the Ronin, was aware of his claws poised to strike. He could hear his mother's voice again, telling him that it was him, or the enemy, telling him there was no time to hesitate. He almost did anyway. But then he remembered the battered woman behind him. While he may have found it hard to kill when it was only his life in danger, adding the life of an innocent woman into the equation erased all doubt. There was a spray of blood as the man's throat was torn out. Naruto's first kill fell to the ground. He felt Yujito, her own Mantore no Torimu activated in the form of a yellow-orange cat, press her back to his. Their minds fell back to the hundreds of hours of taijutsu training that they had been through together. Their minds synchronized as they prepared to battle together once more. The Ronin never had a chance. Naruto caught a descending katana between his hands. He spun to the side, ripping the katana out of the man's hand and leaving him defenseless. Yujito's claws flashed in Naruto's wake and ripped open the man's abdomen. He collapsed, his viscera spreading over the ground. Still holding the blade by the tip, Naruto swung it at the next Ronin in line. He was able to raise his own blade to block easily. But Naruto hadn't been trying to score a hit. He had let go of the weapon and reversed his spin before the blades ever made contact. But now the man's sword was high and far to one side. He had no defense as Yujito's kick smashed into his temple and cracked his skull. Naruto leapt over a low slash from the next Ronin. He twisted as he jumped, sending his body into a flat spin. He hooked his arms around the man's head in midair, and let the momentum of his spin break the Ronin's neck with a sharp crack. He landed in perfect balance in front of his next foe. The Ronin had already begun an attack, but it would never have the chance to land. Naruto's left hand shot out with frightening speed, hitting the man on the chin with a palm strike that snapped his head up. The claws of Naruto's feet dug into the ground, increasing traction as his body pivoted. He drove his right fist into the man's exposed throat, and felt the windpipe collapse under the force of the blow. Naruto looked behind him to see Yujito's third kill drop to the ground. The rest of the Ronin were running, along with the drug lord. At least they started to run. Two of them collapsed to the ground, screaming as arcs of electricity crackled across their bodies. The remaining enemies stopped as they saw Mitoku standing 50 feet in front of them, with Akana right behind him. The remaining 4 Ronin made their decision quickly, despite the protests of their leader. 4 katana dropped to the ground as the Ronin raised their hands in surrender. "Well, what do you know?" Akana's voice rang out over the camp. "It seems like you guys are smarter than you look. Mitoku, move their weapons away from them. Naruto, bind them with ninja wire. Wrists get tied together behind their back and either ankle gets tied to their neighbors. Yujito, come with me to check on their prisoners." Naruto released his Mantore no Torimu as he walked over to the prisoners, but kept the first stage of his bloodline active until they were all securely bound. Not that he thought he needed against them, but it did add to intimidation and would help deter any rash actions. He felt his body return to normal as he released the transformation and stretched a bit. It always took a little bit to get used to his standard form after using Megirishi no Torimu. While he was stretching, Maitoku got a good look at his back. You're injured. Not anymore, that healing factor comes in handy. I'm going to have to get this shirt patched up though. Naruto noticed Akana walking over as he finished speaking. The cold fury in her gaze caused the bound prisoners to squirm uncomfortably. Naruto, Maitoku, follow me. We need to discuss our present situation. And you, the men visibly cringed as her attention was refocused on them. She flashed through a quick series of hand seals and formed a bunshin. I'll be watching over you. And if you so much as think about trying to escape, you'll wish I had let my students finish you off. Do I make myself clear? The captive men nodded dumbly. Satisfied, Akana spun on her heel and walked away, followed closely by her two students. Akana waited until they were out of earshot of their captives before turning to face her students. The fury was gone from her gaze as he faced them, replaced with gentle concern. How are you feeling? That's when it all came back to Naruto. At the time he had buried it behind the needs of the moment, ignored it while he concentrated on the fight at hand. Even afterwards he had been able to push it out of his mind as he secured the prisoners. But now, in his mind's eye, he could see the face of his first victim as the Ronin realized he was about to die. He could still feel the second man's neck snap, and the third man vainly gasping for air. He found himself staring at his right hand, still stained with blood. I killed them, 3 of them. His voice came out as a whisper. It was just like you said. No time to think, no time to worry about morals. They were just obstacles, things I needed to get out of my way. But then, when I killed them, I felt vindicated. I was happy when they died. His voice started trailing off. Why was I happy? Because they were wretched, evil men. Akana's voice was clear, without a hint of hesitation. They had kidnapped those women, and beaten them. They hadn't violated them yet, but you could see easily enough what would have happened if you hadn't interfered. In killing the Ronin you protected those innocent women, that's something to be proud of. Even so, you killed for the first time today. Don't expect it to be easy, it never is. Just give it time, and you'll come to accept it. If any of you find yourselves having trouble coming to terms with what you did, come find me. It's one of the things I'm here for. Naruto, Yujito, I'm impressed with the restraint you showed today. Many genin confronted with a situation they felt so strongly about would have jumped straight in, especially if they believed their opponent to be weaker than them. Instead, you waited for backup to arrive, which is never a bad idea in the shinobi world. I can't blame you for going in when you did either. Just remember, if you ever find yourself facing significantly talented opposition, while you're on Team 4, wait for me no matter what. For now though, we need to cook some dinner and get those women fed. After that we'll rest for the night. We'll rest for 8 hours. Yujito has first watch, Naruto second, I'll take third, and Maitoku will have fourth. Tomorrow morning we'll hitch the wagons and turn them around. If we go down the path for 2 hours we'll reach an intersection that'll take us to the closest town. We should be able to reach it by sundown. Once we get there we'll drop off the women and the Ronin we captured, then we take our target back to Kumogakure. Oh, and I got the name of our drug lord. He's called Ryuzairo. How will the former captives get back to their homes? Akana allowed herself a wry grin. Maitoku seemed to be as pragmatic as ever. We'll be arriving at a fairly large town, so quite a bit of trade goes through it. Money won't be an issue, there's enough of it in those wagons to buy them passage. They should even have enough left over to get some decent clothing. Naruto shuddered a bit at the cold tone in his mother's voice. She had absolutely no tolerance for any source of abuse directed at women. The kidnappers were lucky she was handing them over to the authorities. If she had decided to deal with them personally, their fate would have been much more unpleasant. The group moved out early the next morning. Akana was driving the lead wagon, which also contained the women they had rescued. Yujito had told Maitoku, who really hadn't wanted to argue the point, that he was driving the middle wagon. She, of course, rode in the last wagon, which was driven by Naruto. However, this left her with nothing to occupy herself with. Inevitably, she got bored. After a brief search of the wagon's contents revealed nothing to amuse herself with, she decided to use Naruto. She spent the next half hour taxing his concentration. She ran her fingers through his hair, nibbled on his earlobe, leaned in close. In other words, decided to be just as appealing and distracting as possible. Naruto was, understandably, having significant difficulties concentrating on the task at hand. Yujito-chan. Yes? I'm, trying to concentrate on driving the wagon here. Any particular reason you're telling me this? Well, you're being kind of distracting. How so? Naruto made a soft, growling sound from the back of his throat before speaking in a tone that clearly betrayed his impatience. Yujito. Well, it just so happens that I'm bored, and there's nothing else of interest in this wagon. So you're just going to have to deal with it. Like hell I will. Naruto performed a few quick hand seals, then thrust the reins into the hands of a startled Saitiki Bunshin. Yujito let out a small squeak of surprise and anticipation as Naruto's tackle carried the couple into the back of the wagon. Team 4 made it to the city Akana had mentioned during the early evening hours. After the wagons had been driven up to the station kept by local authorities, she had given them a voucher stamped with the seal of Kumogakure, and told them to find a hotel for the night. The three genin had promptly found a 4-room suite, designed with ninja teams in mind, and settled down to wait for Akana's arrival. She made it 4 hours later, with a distinctly disgruntled expression on her face. I hate dealing with administrators. I swear, the more I work with them, the more I'm convinced they're all idiots, with the possible exception of Reikage-sama. What happened? Mainly, it's just that they draw everything out. I should have been able to have everything sorted out in about half an hour. But no, I was there for 3 hours. Now come on. We're getting dinner. I'll tell you what we're doing from there. They scoured the city briefly, before finding a barbecue restaurant. Once there, Akana decided to elaborate. Well, the law enforcement agencies of this town are going to take care of the Ronin we caught. They're also going to sort through the wagons and their contents, so that's one less thing we'll have to worry about. They did try to pass off the responsibility of getting those women home on us, but I put my foot down on that. They were rather shocked to find out how adamant I could be. A spark jumped from Akana's fingertips to the table during her last sentence. Ka-sen, didn't you tell us not to assault civilian authorities ever? Yes, but they were getting on my nerves. And I still expect you to abide by that rule. She ignored Naruto's subsequent mutterings about hypocrisy. Anyways, since I've arranged for law enforcement to take care of that, we'll be leaving tomorrow for Kumogakure with the Ryuzairo. I'll carry him, which means our travel speed shouldn't suffer. So we should be back home 4 days from now. As an afterthought she threw in, Naruto, keep your elbows off the table. I taught you better manners than that. This, of course, caused Naruto to spout another diatribe about how much it sucked to have his mother as a jounin sensei. Akana just grinned and ignored him. Embarrassing your child, she concluded, could just be so much fun. The team hit the road early next morning, with the Ryuzairo trussed like a pig and slung over Akana's shoulder. He spent the entire time throwing insults at them, the girls especially. At lunch, Naruto took note of the less than amused expressions on both females' faces and decided to give the man fair warning. You know, I'd watch my mouth if I were you. While it is considered unbecoming for a shinobi to strike a prisoner, many kunoichi have rather short tempers. After seeing your captives, Yujito-chan and Akana-sensei are already on a short fuse. Naruto flicked his head aside to avoid the glob of spit Ryuzairo launched his way. Shut your mouth, brat. I don't need any advice from a snot-nosed kid like you. Suit yourself, but don't say I didn't give you fair warning. Later that night, Naruto was shaken awake by Yujito to begin second watch. Emerging from his tent, he wasn't at all surprised to see Ryuzairo sporting a black eye and a split lip. I do recall advising you to shut up. He expected another quick, angry, blunt, unimaginative, and coarse retort. Instead, he heard his captive speak in a low, calm voice. You brats disgust me. Naruto sat down on a tree branch before replying in a cheerful voice, what was that? I said you disgust me, all of you. All full of your cheerful optimism. So sure that you're in the right, that your pure morals are absolute. Do you think we're idiots? We know the world isn't that simple. Right and wrong is subjective, so are morals and ethics. A person's actions will align themselves with that person's own take on morality. That's why the elemental nations war. Power, however, is absolute. That's why the elemental nations exist. Individuals are left to find a way to balance their morals with those of the greater powers in the world. That's what I've done. Sure, I'll be forced to do things that I may not like. But I'll be doing far more things that I do approve of, and I'll eventually be in a position of power, able to use my influence to exert my morals on the world. I've found a place where I can do more good than bad. You, however, have openly flouted authority and brought harm to countless innocent people. Morality may just be shades of gray, but you're close corrupt enough that I'm not conflicted about stopping you in the least. Now, if you'll shut up, I have to keep watch. The man opened his mouth, but Naruto cut him off. I said to shut up. Can you do it yourself, or do I have to do it for you? The man wisely decided to shut up. Naruto was relieved from his watch by Maitoku, who seemed just as fed up with their prisoner as Naruto was. He did hide it much better though, but Naruto figured that if Ryuzairo pushed Maitoku too far he'd regret it. Akana had the final watch, and was still upset over the captive females he had kept. Needless to say, Ryuzairo was much less outspoken for the rest of the journey. Nevertheless, Team 4 was excited when they finally pulled into view of Kumo. Once they got there, they could drop their prisoner off and wouldn't have to worry about him again. What they weren't expecting was to find a sealed letter waiting for them at the gate. Orders from Reikage-sama, one of the guards explained. Leave your captive here. Someone will be along to pick him up soon. You're supposed to report directly to Reikage-sama's office to give your report. The Reikage wants an oral report about a C-rank mission. The skepticism was apparent in Akana's voice. He almost never personally debriefs shinobi about anything less than A rank. The Chunin shrugged. Hey, I just read the orders. I didn't give them. Akana shrugged, then dropped her captive unceremoniously to the dirt. Better see what he wants then. Team 4, follow me. She ran into the village before leaping to the rooftops and making her way toward the Reikage's tower. They arrived shortly, then Akana gave a full and detailed report of their mission. When she finished, Team 4 stood at attention, awaiting the Reikage's response. Very good, you handled yourselves admirably. Now I'm sure you're wondering why I called your team here for a personal debriefing. He paused for a moment to examine the team, finding the expected looks of curiosity on all of their faces. The truth is, I didn't call you here for a debriefing. You have another C rank. Now I know it's unusual for a rookie Genin team to be given 2 of them in a row, but Akana has had the most experience with this guy out of all our shinobi here. She leaned forward slightly. Who? In response, the Reikage tossed her a folder. She snatched it out of the air and flipped it open, glancing at the photo. A look of resignation crossed her face as she glared at the Reikage. Sometimes I hate you. The Reikage just grinned. Akana gave a full and detailed report of their mission. When she finished, Team 4 stood at attention, awaiting the Reikage's response. He leaned forward, resting his elbows on his desk before speaking. Very good, you handled yourselves admirably. Now I'm sure you're wondering why I called your team here for a personal debriefing. He paused for a moment to examine the team, finding the expected looks of curiosity on all of their faces. The truth is, I didn't call you here for a debriefing. You have another C rank. Now I know it's unusual for a rookie Genin team to be given 2 of them in a row, but Akana has had the most experience with this guy out of all our shinobi here. She leaned forward slightly. What guy? In response, the Reikage tossed her a folder. She snatched it out of the air and flipped it open, glancing at the photo. A look of resignation crossed her face as she glared at the Reikage. Sometimes I hate you. He just grinned. Naruto tried to keep quiet, but didn't quite manage it. Hey, 3 days ago you threatened me if I didn't show Reikage-sama more respect. He was my Jounin sensei, I'm entitled. Yeah, of course you'd get the exception. What's so bad about this guy we need to catch anyways? She groaned again. We're going after Kazuhiko Izanagi. He's the most two-faced, smooth-talking, treacherous bastard I've ever met. He's probably the most aggravating and soulless person I've ever met as well. She turned to face the Reikage again. Why do I have to go find him? He stole a document that was en route to the Lightning Daimyo, who wants it back. Izanagi specializes in stealth and infiltration, so his combat skills are severely lacking. This makes the mission a C rank. You're going because you've had more experience dealing with and finding him than anyone else in the village. Lucky me. The Reikage continued as if he hadn't heard her. Intelligence suggests that he's in Nagunta City, and that folder contains just about anything that could be of help to you. You'll have 2 days to relax a bit and brief your team, then you head out. Are there any questions? Can't Nagao do it instead? The Reikage fixed Akana with a level stare. He could, but I gave the mission to you. Did I mention earlier that I hate you sometimes? The Reikage rolled his eyes and leaned back in his chair. Dismissed. As Team 4 walked through the streets, Akana's irritation was plain to see. They moved in silence for several seconds before Maitoka finally spoke. Reikage-sama mentioned that you've had dealings with the man before? Yeah, I've worked with and against him. The man has no morals, and no sense of loyalty to anybody except himself and anyone he happens to be working with at the moment. Like the Reikage said, he's a pushover when it comes to combat. But that doesn't mean he's not dangerous. The man is a genius when it comes to stealth and infiltration, easily better than most the NBU. He uses that ability to steal secrets and documents of all kinds. You said you've worked against him, Maitoka interjected. Does that mean he actively works against Rhino Kuni? Yes and no, he's worked against our nation. But does so less than he works against everyone else, which is why he's tolerated. His actions hurt our enemies more than they hurt us. Balancing his pros against his cons, I suppose. It's a smart move on his part though, give him one place that'll tolerate him. It's rather typical of his way of thinking. So you know a lot about him then? More than just about anybody else in this village, and I've got a day to fill you in. True to her word, Akana spent the next 2 days drilling everything she knew about Izanagi into their heads. They learned about his looks, mannerisms, speech patterns, about the minor genjutsus he could use to great effect when evading pursuit, and much more. Her genin began to feel as though they knew the man, despite never having been anywhere near him. The team left in the early morning as soon after the 2 days given to them by the Reikage were up. They covered ground quickly, moving to the southwest corner of Rai no Kuni. Moving at full speed, they arrived in about 2.5 days. They barely even slowed as they entered the city, moving straight for the hotel that had been booked for them. They arrived panting, slightly out of breath. Akana-sensei, Yujito's voice broke the silence. Was it really wise to enter like that? Izanagi's sure to know there are ninja about now. That's the point. The man is extremely inquisitive. He won't be able to resist trying to figure out why we're here. And if we have him sniffing around trying to find us instead of trying to lay low, it'll be a lot easier to find him. I see. Good. Now, he's likely to come snooping around later tonight, so we have to be paying attention. In other words, stay alert for nearby chakra signatures. Naruto, Yujito, I'm going to have one of you waiting on the roof since you two are better able to suppress your chakra signature. With luck, we can find him tonight. But for now, let's eat. Naruto ended up drawing the short straw and was stuck waiting outside. He was crouched on a slightly taller building that overlooked his hotel. He had a black bandana tied over his bright yellow hair, but it did little to stop the rain that had started about an hour after he got outside. He was wet, cold, and in a very bad mood. Izanagi, he decided, had better show up soon. He didn't, and Naruto spent 5 hours crouched outside with no sign of his quarry. Then, at about 3 o'clock in the morning, he sensed something. There was a chakra signature slowly approaching from the north. Naruto crushed a sudden surge of elation. He couldn't afford to let his emotions ruin his concentration and cause his chakra to spike. He slowly shifted position, changing his field of view and spotting a shadowy figure moving slowly across the rooftops. He moved quickly yet stealthily to the roof of the hotel. No sooner had he touched down than Akana appeared on the roof with a crackle of electricity. Naruto also saw Yujito and Maitoka burst out the window and sprint up the side of the building. Izanagi, Akana's voice rang out clearly, we need to talk. Akana, it's been a while, hasn't it? Izanagi's voice was smooth, and dripped with charm, sincerity, and charisma. He completely ignored Yujito and Maitoka as they arrived on the roof alongside Akana. Let's see, 5 years. Yes, back when we stole that trade information from the water daimyo. I'm not here to talk about the past. You never seem to be, always so serious and full of business. You need to learn to relax a little. I'd help, but unfortunately I must be going. He broke to his right suddenly, sprinting towards the edge of the roof. Maitoka didn't even seem to notice him moving. Naruto picked up on his other teammates' reactions as well. Yujito stared at his former position for about a second before shrugging something off and sprinting after him, while Akana quickly brought her hands up in the ram sign before giving chase. The man had obviously used a genjutsu. Izanagi was fast, and was gone from the rooftop in the blink of an eye. Luckily, however, he was moving towards Naruto. The aforementioned genin was still hard-pressed to catch him though. He landed on the far corner of the building and leapt off almost immediately. Naruto had sprinted across the building as soon as he saw Izanagi move, and just managed to catch the older man's ankle. He whirled, and tossed the infiltrator back towards the center of the roof. Izanagi was caught by surprise, and hit the roof in an undignified heap. He was back on his feet quickly though, and Naruto got his first good look at their quarry. The man was completely unremarkable in appearance. He was of standard height, standard weight, plain face, brown eyes, black hair. Even his clothes were unremarkable, made of drab-colored cloth and in a plain cut. Only by observing his eyes closely could one tell that there was anything special about the man. They had a shifty intelligence, and spoke of a lifetime of experience. Naruto noted how they were darting around the rooftop, obviously looking for an escape route. So the fourth member of the team makes his appearance. I was wondering when you'd show up. The grin soon faded from his face though, and Naruto knew why. He had felt the chakra lacing Izanagi's words, a sound-based genjutsu. It never quite caught a firm hold on Naruto, however, and he was able to shrug it off with minimal effort. I'm sorry, you'll find that won't work too well on me. Didn't work too well on your Kunoichi teammate either. You're them, aren't you, the wielders of this Tarimya Ujuk bloodline I keep hearing about? Naruto grinned as the rest of his team arrived. That's right, so if you'd just cooperate for a second. Izanagi flashed a grim smile. Sorry kid, but it's not like genjutsu is the only thing I've got up my sleeve. He shifted his weight slightly, and the area was suddenly enveloped in smoke. When it cleared, Izanagi was gone. Yujito and Naruto were both moving in slow circles. Their Megarashi no Tarimya was active, and they had enacted another stage as well. They now had slitted pupils, and their irises had adopted the color of their markings. There was also chakra surrounding their ears, taking on a form suggestive of those of a cat or fox. Well, asked Akana, anything? Naruto growled in frustration. No, not even with the Shiki no Torimu. We can catch his scent where he was standing, but then it's like he just disappeared. We'll split up then. Naruto and Yujito will pair up, Mitoku's with me. Search the area in concentric circles. He has to have left some trace of where he went. The four shinobi leapt off the roof in a blur. Izanagi was standing on the top floor of the building, and let out a sigh of relief as he felt them leave. He had phased through the roof to escape his pursuers. It was a useful escape jutsu that he had just learned. It was nigh impossible to sense it being used. There was no sound and no chakra surge like what would be felt with a Shenshin. He was lucky to have it. Akana was highly gifted in genjutsu. And however Torimu Yujuki helped its bearers, it seemed to make them highly resistant to genjutsu. He'd have to lay low for the rest of the night, and leave tomorrow. The following morning a team of very disgruntled shinobi met back at their hotel room. They had spent all night running around the city, and not seen hide nor hair of Izanagi. Damn, Naruto muttered, I've never seen anybody just disappear like that. Not even Reikage-sama. That's because Izanagi has trained exclusively in stealth and infiltration. I don't even know how he pulled that escape off, and I've worked alongside him before. Even when you're allied with him, he hides his abilities. He'll use genjutsu to cover up many of the things he does, and always insists on splitting up. I get the picture. Got any idea as to what he'll do next? Well, that's easy, he's going to leave. Wait, all that talk about how unpredictable and secretive he is. And you can just predict his next move that easily? Oh, I can't predict his next move. But you just said he's going to leave. I can predict the purpose of his next move. I know he'll want to get out of here. What I don't know is how. He could climb the walls, leave under disguise, hide in a wagon, leave under a genjutsu. There's no way to tell. So how are we supposed to catch him? We're going to patrol the city and try to sense his chakra signature. Wonderful, the sarcasm was evident in Naruto's voice. When do we start? Now. Naruto groaned. He had barely gotten a few hours of sleep before he had gone out to watch for Izanagi the previous night. Then he spent half the night crouched on a rooftop, in the rain. He proceeded to spend the rest of the night running around the entire city, also in the rain. Now he was going to run all around the edges of the city, and the kami-forsaken rain still hadn't stopped. He sighed. It was shaping up to be a crappy day. He bit back his complaint though, and leapt after Yujito as the pair took off to continue scouring the city. 2 hours later Naruto was really starting to get annoyed, and a bit fatigued. He had spent 2.5 days of hard travel, a night spent running around in the rain, followed by a day spent running around in the rain. If it wasn't for his inhuman stamina, he doubted he'd even be aware of his surroundings. Stamina or no, his fatigue got the better of him, and he stumbled as he landed on the next roof. Yujito placed a steadying hand on his shoulder. You okay? Yeah, just starting to get a bit tired is all. I didn't get to sleep in shifts like the rest of you. Then you shouldn't draw the short straw next time. If I'd have known it was the short straw, do you really think I'd have drawn it? Whatever, just settle down and get a little bit of rest. Then we can keep going. Naruto nodded and leaned back against the cooling unit on the roof. As he let himself relax, he found his mind drifting back to his brief encounter with Izanagi last night. Something was bothering him, but he couldn't quite place it. Wait, that was it. He had been fleeing to the east. They had already been fairly close to the eastern edge of the city, and there were no more gates in the walls any further in that direction. In fact, the walls themselves stopped where they met a massive series of cliffs. Izanagi couldn't have been planning on climbing them, they were made of shale. Loose, slippery shale that would crash down and slice apart anyone that was foolish enough to climb it. It made that section of the town very dangerous. The only things there were heavily reinforced warehouses that contained cargo from boats moving along the river. That's it. He shot to his feet, all fatigue forgotten. The river. What do you mean the river? Last night, when he was fleeing from the rooftop, he was headed east. There's nothing east of there except warehouses and the docks. He was heading to the river, it was his first instinct. He's going to use it to get out of the city. Come on. Wait, Naruto, are you sure? But Naruto was already gone, leaping along the rooftops as he headed towards the river. Yujito bit back a curse and leapt after him, thumbing the radio on her belt so she could tell Akana where they were going. Naruto didn't stop until he reached the last tall building that overlooked the docks. Upon arrival, he stood at the edge and stared down at the streets below. Yujito landed next to him. River, huh? I don't see him. I don't know when he's leaving Yujito-chan, only where he's doing it from. Wait, there. Yujito followed Naruto's pointing finger, and sure enough, a figure could be seen running down the street between rows of warehouses. Yujito opened her mouth to give him a plan of pursuit, but Naruto was already gone. He can be so impulsive at times, she grumbled. Then she hit the switch on her radio. Akana-sensei, we have visual contact among the warehouses by the river. We're initiating pursuit. Akana's voice came back, garbled slightly by static. Understood, Maitoku and I are on our way. Yujito switched the radio back to standby mode and leapt off after Naruto. The aforementioned blonde was making good time. He had guessed Izanagi's route correctly, and put on all speed. He landed in the middle of an alley about 15 seconds before Izanagi came sprinting around the corner. He pulled up short as he saw Naruto waiting for him. Oh, you too. My day keeps getting better and better. This doesn't have to be so difficult, if you'd just be willing to surrender. The SCR. Naruto was cut off as another cloud of smoke obscured the man. This time, however, he was able to notice Izanagi's chakra signature slipping into a warehouse. With a grin of triumph, he ran up the wall and through a window, throwing himself headlong inside. He landed on a stack of crates, and just glimpsed a shadowy figure run by underneath him. He gave chase, but Izanagi managed to lose him in the warehouse. He was, however, forced to give himself away while opening a door to get out. Naruto arrived at a dead sprint and almost bowled over Yujito as he ran outside. About time I found you, start thinking before you run off. Naruto grinned sheepishly and rubbed the back of his head. Heh, sorry Yujito-chan. Guess I just got carried away. Obviously. Anyways, Akana-sensei should be here soon. Then we should be able to get him. Naruto's expression went from sheepish to serious in the blink of an eye. Wait, you mean she's not already here? No, she's on the far side of the city with Maitoku. Why? He said you too. When Izanagi saw me he said oh you too. He had someone else chasing him as well, and if it's not Akana-sensei, then we've got competition. Yeah, the familiar markings of Megarashi no Torimyu appeared on Naruto's skin, and he activated Ishiki no Torimyu soon after. He gave a brief sigh, still amazed at how greatly his senses were enhanced. He twisted his head slightly, catching Izanagi's scent. This way, come on. The two shinobi took off at a dead run. Now they really needed to catch their quarry quickly. Izanagi was fast though, and was able to lead them on quite a chase. He was also able to work his way back to more populated areas. Naruto found that out the hard way, turning a corner and nearly trampling a purple-clad girl. He grabbed her by the shoulders briefly as he ran by, steadying her. Then he ran on with her cries of anger ringing in his ears. Their chase came to an abrupt, though hopefully temporary end, as they charged into a building only to find it empty. It was at that moment that Akana landed behind them. Where is he? Good question, Naruto snarled, angry at himself for letting the man get away. He's just so damn slippery, we can't keep track of him. He has to be close though, we saw him run into this building and we aren't under a genjutsu. Oh, he also alluded to someone else trying to chase him down. Did he give you any clue as to who they are? Nope, not at all. All I know is that we're probably not the only ones trying to catch this guy. Nothing ever seems to go well that involves this guy. Okay, from now on we move as a unit. Let's see if we can sense his chakra, we need to catch him fast. Before the genin could voice their agreement, an explosion rumbled throughout the district, likely from a large explosive tag. The four of them exchanged glances, then raced off. They arrived at the smoking crater about a minute later. Naruto and Yujito immediately took a few sniffs and conferred with each other, then turned to address their teammates. There were 4 people here. Izanagi was one, along with another male in his 20s. There were also 3 people about our age, 2 male and 1 female. Akana looked up from where she was analyzing the crater. Must have been another genin team. Did anybody get caught in the blast? Doubtful, there's no blood. Okay then, start trying to find chakra signatures. See if you can pick out a group of 3 that have reserves around genin level. The other team searching for Izanagi saw him last, so they'll have a better idea of where he is now than we do. They're also going to be a lot easier to sense than he is. Hell, the jounin with them might be easier to sense than Izanagi. Got them, Naruto and Yujito spoke simultaneously, both having picked up on the chakra signatures of the 3 genin almost instantly. Akana nodded, having picked up on the signatures as well. Okay, let's go. Team 4 set off and Akana soon noticed something. They're moving towards us. Naruto grinned, hopefully that means they're herding Izanagi in our direction. Maitoku briefly adjusted the kodachi at his hip before speaking. That is a distinct possibility, and a most welcome one at that. I've grown weary of chasing this one. Yujito quirked an eyebrow, while Maitoku, that has to be the most words I've ever heard you speak at once. Akana cut in before Maitoku could reply. Quiet, if Izanagi is coming towards us we don't want to alert him of our presence before he arrives. Talk if you have to, otherwise keep your mouths closed. The four shinobi hurtled forward in the tense silence, each of them hoping that their chase was finally at its end. They rounded a corner to see Izanagi sprinting towards them. He skidded to an abrupt stop and spun around, only to see four more shinobi turn that corner. They all bore Konoha highlights. A bearded jounin met Akana's gaze as he removed a cigarette from his mouth and stomped it out beneath his heel. You were one of Kumo's diplomats. It's been what now, 10 years? Yeah, 10 years, she turned to regard her team. It should go without saying, but we can't let them get that scroll. The jounin turned to his team as well. Well, looks like you'll get a bit of a fight after all. It was the dark-haired boy standing behind his sensei that, in Akana's opinion, summed up the situation quite nicely. How troublesome. Izanagi looked back and forth at the teams standing at both ends of the alley. Well, I certainly seem to be popular today. Why don't you just duke it out and the winner can come find me? Izanagi suddenly found himself on the receiving end of 8 incredulous stares. What, I thought it was at least worth a shot. The alley lapsed into a tense silence as all three sides prepared for fight, or flight. It was broken rather suddenly. Hey, you're the guy who almost ran me over earlier. With a start, Naruto realized that he did indeed recognize the purple-clad girl who had just stepped out from behind her sensei. You should be more careful. That street was all muddy, and you almost knocked me down. Ino, this isn't the time. But Asuma-sensei. I said this isn't the time. Right now we have a real problem. There was a slight emphasis put on the word real. We need to get that scroll off of him. I'll take Akana, the jounin with them. The three of you are going to have to get that scroll off of Izanagi. Shikamaru, do you think the three of you can handle that? We'll have to see. I don't know anything about their capabilities yet. Well, try anyways. Shikamaru sighed. How troublesome. Akana turned to look at her team. The jounin with them is Sarutobi Asuma, the Sandame's son. You're not ready to face him yet, so I'll have to deal with him. His genin team looks like they're related to the Ino Shikacho trio from the Third Great Ninja War. Probably their children, so be careful. Just remember, we need to make sure that Izanagi doesn't get away too. The Ino Shikacho trio have significant political influence in Konoha, and they have significant influence in Konoha. We're already on shaky terms with that village, so no killing unless you have no choice. This is just a mess, isn't it? Naruto reactivated his Megarishi no Torimyu as he spoke, flexing his claws before closing his hands into fists. Asuma's eyes narrowed at the far side of the alley. I've never seen anything like that before, and to not use any hand signs. It's their bloodline, Torimyu Yujuki. It was created 10 years ago by some sort of sealing incident. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he turned to regard Izanagi, his limbs becoming outlined in chakra as he activated Shurtai no Torimyu. You really need to learn how to shut up sometimes. He sprang forward with eye-blurring speed. Asuma cursed and leapt forward as well, prompting a similar reaction from Akana. Izanagi looked at the foes charging from both sides, and quickly decided that discretion was the better part of valor. Sticking to the walls, he scaled them and got out of harm's way. Naruto and Asuma were left bearing down on each other. Naruto remembered Akana's warning, and his thoughts went along much the same lines as Izanagi's. He slowed his pace slightly, allowing Akana to catch up to him. Then just before he reached Asuma he stopped suddenly, racing off to one side. Asuma had his trench knives out to the sides of his body, preparing to fend off the wide, sweeping blows that were invariably used with claws. Akana took full advantage of this, driving a punch through his defenses that sent him reeling. He reacted on instinct, swiping across with his trench knives as he stumbled back. Akana pulled back, her instincts warning her about something. Her caution paid off as she saw a deep gash appear in the wall of the alley, a full foot away from Asuma's knife. That was all Naruto saw of their fight as he raced up the wall after Izanagi. With the speed boost he gained from Shurtai no Torimyu he caught the man fairly quickly, and Yujito soon pulled up on the other side of him. Seeing that running wasn't going to get him anywhere, Izanagi went to ground, well, figuratively at least. He landed on a roof and spun to face his pursuers. They stood staring at each other briefly before Naruto broke the silence. So, you've finally given up on running away, have you? Of course not, I'm just waiting for the rest of them to catch up. Most genin can't move as quickly as we can, you know. Naruto spun around, just in time to see a giant green ball rolling towards him. He recognized the Akimichi clan's Nikatenka no Jutsu, and knew he didn't want to get hit by it. Unfortunately, even with Sure Tai no Tarimi, he didn't have time to move out of the way. Instead, the chakra around his limbs changed, appearing more intense and compact as he tapped into another aspect of his bloodline. He dug his feet in and met the attack as he growled out the name of the latest aspect of his bloodline. Chikara no Tarimyu. He brought his hands forward, halting the hurtling ball of Akimichi when it was about half a foot away. The stop was only temporary, however. The Akimichi kept rolling, and Naruto felt himself being slowly pushed backwards. He growled again as he looked behind him. There wasn't much real estate between him and the edge of the roof. If he didn't do something soon, he was going to get pushed off. He grinned as an idea crossed his mind. If it didn't work, he was going to be hurting a lot. Oh well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. He threw himself backwards, landing flat on his back and letting the Akimichi roll forward. Naruto acted quickly. He had little choice if he wanted to avoid being run over. He slid his feet under the Akimichi's leading edge and heaved upwards, lifting the Akimichi's bulk into the air. His knees and elbows bent, allowing the rolling attack to get dangerously close. Even with the strength provided by this aspect of his bloodline, he couldn't hold this much weight for long, but he didn't have to. With a cry of effort, he thrust his limbs straight upwards while rocking back on his shoulder blades. He hurled the Akimichi off of him, sending the Konohanin skipping across an adjacent rooftop before crashing down into an alley. Naruto flipped to his feet, and let an amused smile creep onto his face at the look of shocked amazement worn on Ino's face. Yujito's voice snapped him out of his brief reverie. Naruto, watch the shadow. He snapped his gaze down to the roof, and saw a shadow snaking his way towards him from the pineapple-haired boy standing on the corner of the roof. He leapt backwards, leaping nimbly across the roof just ahead of the shadow. Naruto shot his gaze over to Izanagi as he leapt back from the shadow. Yujito, he's using this as a distraction to get away. Yujito growled, and moved to block off Izanagi's escape. Unfortunately, the Akimichi picked that moment to hop back onto the rooftop. His arrival forced Yujito to skid to a stop, allowing Izanagi an open escape route. But he was soon forced to stop as well. 3 kunai that embedded themselves in the roof ahead of him, announcing Maitoku's presence. This is so troublesome. What do you mean, Shikamaru? Naruto turned to look at Ino, who had asked the question. Sure, it's a fight, but they're just genin like us. It's not just a fight, Ino, we need to keep track of Izanagi too. We also have to worry about their bloodline, which we know very little about. Oh. Shikamaru turned to look at his other teammate. Chuji, how are you feeling? He answered between bites of potato chips. A little sore. That throw was impressive. I've never even heard of that happening to anyone in my clan. Yeah, he's pretty good. And we haven't even seen what his teammates are capable of yet. But since Izanagi mentioned that the girl shares a bloodline with him, it's likely that they have similar capabilities. The other one seems to be a weapons specialist, but aside from that we know little about them. We don't really even know too much about the guy who tossed you. Our capabilities, however, are more well known due to the fame of our fathers. He sighed. How troublesome. Naruto scanned the rooftop quickly, assessing the situation. Yujito, try to get that scroll from Izanagi. Maitoku, you're with me. We need to keep the Konohanin off of her back. Maitoku nodded in agreement. Okay then, Naruto let his Chikara no Tarimi fade. Let's go. Akana twirled backwards, gracefully avoiding a slash of Asuma's knife. She had learned rather quickly that blocking those knives with her kunai only led to holding kunai halves. She stumbled with his next attack, allowing the knife to carve a deep gash across her abdomen. Asuma frowned as she disappeared, swirling away into nothingness. Asuma just continued the sweep of his blade, drawing a superficial cut across his forearm, and using the pain to break the genjutsu more easily. Akana was revealed standing at the entrance of the alley, arms crossed in front of her. Are the knives really necessary? Neither of us wants to create an incident by killing the other during a C-rank. Asuma straightened, ignoring her previous comment as he asked his own question. It's him, isn't it, Uzumaki Naruto? Akana's eyes narrowed, and she did well to keep any traces of surprise or alarm from her face. He's an Araiki, not an Uzumaki. Besides, he's not a Jinchuriki and he has a bloodline. Neither of which were true for Uzumaki Naruto. I never said I had it all figured out, but there are too many coincidences. He's the right age, he's got blonde hair, and blue eyes. Let's not forget that his Jounin sensei is the one who kidnapped Naruto. It's him. Akana grimaced. There was obviously nothing that she'd be able to say to dissuade him from his idea. You're not taking him. Diplomatic relations be damned, I'll kill you before I let him go. Asuma was briefly taken aback by the ferocity in her voice. I'm not trying to kidnap him, don't want to put my team in any more danger. Right now I'm just worried about Izanagi. Keep it that way. Naruto leapt aside, dodging Chuji's oversized hand as it smashed down onto the roof. He turned his leap into a handspring, avoiding Shikamaru's questing shadow. Chuji had abandoned his Nikotenka no Jutsu after he found that it made him an easy target for Maitoku. Unfortunately, the weapons specialist had misjudged the added toughness Chuji gained from his increased size. The boy had taken a nasty shock, but hadn't been knocked unconscious like Maitoku had intended. Now Chuji was occupying Naruto up close, with Shikamaru giving him support with his Kagemain no Jutsu. He was also using his throwing weapons in conjunction with Ino to deflect Maitoku's attacks. Naruto had to admit, they were pretty good for Genin. It was time to step it up a notch. He grinned, feeling a familiar lightness in his legs as they became limbed in chakra. Shurtai no Torinya. He surged forward with a sudden burst of speed. Chuji swept an oversized arm at him, but didn't fully comprehend Naruto's new speed. Naruto waited until the last second before reacting, simply hopping over the arm and speeding forward. He sprinted the rest of the distance. Chuji dropped back, frantically trying to keep a bit of separation. As Naruto closed in, Chuji took a sidelong swipe at him. Naruto threw himself violently to one side, placing a hand on the ground to maintain his balance. He flipped up onto his hands, freeing his legs. Had he wanted to, he could have used the claws on his feet to open Chuji's throat, but he had been told that casualties were to be specifically avoided, so he opted to just knock him out of the fight for a while. His first foot smashed into the side of Chuji's head, dazing him. Naruto's second foot hit the throat, causing Chuji to clutch his throat and reel back. Naruto's eyes flicked between his other two opponents as his feet touched the ground, and he rushed Ino. He knew that Shikamaru would grow progressively more dangerous the closer he got to him. The shorter the distance between the two, the less time Naruto would have to react to Shikamaru's shadow. He'd deal with Ino first, and hopefully still have time to get to the shadow user before Chuji got back in the fight. Naruto, it's a trap. Naruto gave the area another glance as he heard Maitoku's warning, taking note of several details that had previously seemed innocuous. Due to Shikamaru's location, his shadow naturally merged with another shadow cast by a taller building off to the side. Ino was standing in that same patch of shadow. Furthermore, Shikamaru's back was turned and he had both hands held in front of him. Naruto had previously thought they held kunai to deflect Maitoku's own projectiles, but was now willing to bet that they were held in the final hand sign for the Kagemain no Jutsu. Naruto suddenly realized that even if he didn't know the exact method, Shikamaru had predicted Naruto's general plan of attack with perfect accuracy. He knew where Naruto was going to go as soon as the Kumonin did, and had set his trap accordingly. The blonde tried to swerve to the side, but it was too late. A tendril of shadow shot out from the larger patch and latched onto his own. He felt his body freeze as he heard the shadow user's lazy drawl. Kagemain no Jutsu success. Ino turned to take advantage of the situation, but Maitoku was already in motion. He threw a pair of kunai, attached by wires. The improvised bolos whirled through the air, crackling with electricity and forcing her back. He followed up with a stream of saban that kept her dodging, and moving steadily away from Naruto. Shikamaru sighed, watching Plan A go up in smoke as Ino was driven steadily away from Naruto. Troublesome, but he still had Plan B. He lifted his foot to begin repositioning Naruto, or at least he tried to. No matter how hard he tried to pull his foot up, Naruto didn't budge, and by extension neither did Shikamaru. Incredible, he gasped, to resist my Kagemain this much with just brute strength. I'm not using brute strength yet. It was true, he was just using his chakra to keep his feet stuck to the roof. It wasn't that different than tree walking. But that does seem to be my best course of action. The chakra surrounding Naruto's limbs compressed and intensified as he activated his Chikara no Torimu. He wasted no time testing his improved strength, pushing his foot outwards into a wider stance. Sweat beaded on Shikamaru's brow as he fought to keep Naruto still. But the blonde's strength was relentless, and Shikamaru felt his foot sliding along the ground. As I suspected, your Kagemain links our movements together. Not only are your movements forced upon me, but mine are forced upon you as well. The jutsu just gives you an advantage in the resulting competition of strength. Shikamaru gritted his teeth. He never had this happen before. He was being completely overpowered by his own jutsu. Still, he could slow Naruto down. He should be able to buy enough time for Chuji to get an attack in. Then he felt himself bending at the knees and felt a sudden flood of disbelief. Naruto couldn't have figured it out, could he? Naruto jumped, bringing Shikamaru with him. It was only a short hop, taking both boys off the ground for just an instant. But in that instant, both boys lost contact with their shadow. In that instant, Shikamaru's shadow snapped back to its normal length. In that instant, the Kagemain no Jutsu was broken. Freed from Shikamaru's restricting influence, Naruto was moving as soon as he hit the ground. He turned to face Chuji's enormous fist descending in a hammer fist strike, and caught it with one hand. He turned to calmly gaze at Chuji, who was red-faced with effort as he tried to pull his hand free. "I'd have thought," Naruto intoned calmly, "that you'd have known better than to try that on me." He would have said more, but he could already see Shikamaru's shadow extending out of the corner of his eye. So instead he spun, and used his momentum combined with leverage to throw Chuji again. Shikamaru's eyes had a fraction of a second to widen before he was knocked off the roof by his teammate's bulk. Utilizing his Shurtai no Torimu, Naruto actually made it to the edge of the roof before either of his airborne opponents. As he looked down into the alley, he could see Asuma and Akana locked together in combat. Apparently their fight had taken them in the same direction of their students. Akana had her back turned to him, and didn't see the two airborne Konohanin. Asuma did. He performed an awkward disengage that had both combatants stumbling backwards and off balance. Akana had a split second to wonder about his choice before she went down as Shikamaru and Chuji flew into her. Naruto was already moving. He bore down on Asuma, switching to Mantora no Torimu as he descended into the alley. Asuma turned and met Naruto's advance with a slash of his trench knife. Naruto responded by pitching himself violently to the side, placing a hand flat on the ground for support. He could have completely avoided the slash, but that would have taken him out of position for his own counter. Instead, he moved just far enough, knowing his Mantora no Torimu would be able to handle the rest of the attack. He was wrong. His eyes widened as he felt the blade shred his protective mantle of chakra like tissue paper. Aborting his attack, he threw himself backwards, nursing a gash on his arm. He flexed it experimentally, relieved to find that it still had its full range of movement. He returned his attention to Asuma as he felt his wound mend. Wind chakra channeled along the blade to increase its length and sharpness. Never actually seen somebody do that before. "It appears my Mantora no Torimu won't be as much help as I had hoped." He let it fade as he spoke, bringing up Chikara no Torimu instead. "Interesting," commented Asuma as the two traded a series of experimental attacks. "I would have expected you to use your bloodline to increase your speed." Naruto ducked another knife slash and threw a punch as he snarled his reply. "You know why I didn't." Naruto was correct, and Asuma's respect for the genin went up a few notches. Just about any green opponent would have opted for the speed boost in an attempt to erase, or even eclipse the gap between the two of them. But Asuma had been paying attention when he saw Naruto use it before. Shurtai no Torimu did provide an amazing increase in speed, but it only sped its user's limbs. While under its effect, the torso and head would be unable to keep up with the hands and feet. While it had its uses, Shurtai no Torimu was ill-suited for use in taijutsu between skilled combatants. For a brief second, Asuma felt as if he was in a shogi game as he thought through various scenarios and tactics. Deciding upon his course of action, he pressed forward with a series of vicious strokes. Naruto gritted his teeth in frustration. None of Asuma's recent attacks were particularly difficult to dodge. Nonetheless, they were well set up and limited Naruto's options. He was being hurted, and there wasn't much he could do about it. Then Asuma saw his chance. Both of his blades rolled to the outside, then snapped towards Naruto's neck from either side. His knives had already proved capable of cutting through the boy's defenses, and the wall at his back left Naruto with no place to run. Put a blade on either side of the boy's neck, Asuma reasoned, and you could force a surrender. But Naruto wasn't done yet. He threw both sets of claws out to intercept the trench knives. And, much to Asuma's surprise, stopped them. "I thought you said you'd never seen that done before." "I lied." Naruto injected plenty of bravado into that statement, but felt none of it. He was proficient with his wind manipulation, but not as good as Asuma. He could see the wind surrounding Asuma's trench knives gradually slicing through the wind he had around his claws, and he really didn't want to see if his healing factor could regrow fingers. Instead, he dropped straight down, feeling the wind of the blades passing ruffle his hair as they passed harmlessly over his head. He planted a hand on the ground for support and kicked straight up, wreathing his foot in water chakra. Asuma's eyes widened as he snapped his head back, avoiding the kick by millimeters. He winced as his right cheek erupted into a bruise anyway. Asuma leapt back, giving himself a bit of space. He noted that Naruto carefully avoided bringing his foot close to any part of his body until the water chakra had died out. He settled back into a basic guard stance with his knives. His mind was racing. Channeling pure elemental chakra into a weapon was practically impossible unless certain alloys were used. Asuma himself used trench knives made of a chakra-conductive alloy. To channel elemental chakra along bare hands and feet like that was impressive, to say the least. He vowed to take the young blonde even more seriously. Yujito, meanwhile, was moving patiently through near impenetrable darkness. She had followed Izanagi into a warehouse. With the lights off, the only illumination came from small slit-like windows situated high on the walls. They provided a little less illumination than one would expect on a starry night. There were only two means of entry and exit. One was the door that led to the roof, which they had used to enter the building. Its edges still glowed a dull red from where Yujito had used her fiery claws to weld it shut. The other was a large bay door made of sheet metal. There was no way it could be opened without catching Yujito's attention, which was why they found themselves in their current situation. Unwilling to let Yujito catch him off guard while opening the large door, Izanagi had disappeared into the depths of the warehouse. He was trying to find some way to disable her so he'd get a free shot outside. She was still trying to capture him. Yujito was actually enjoying herself. Leaping across piles of crates with her bloodline active, she realized that she felt like a hunting cat stalking its prey. She found the experience to be quite invigorating. She was currently crouched on top of a large pile of crates. Her Ishiki no Torimu was activated in order to help her see through the gloom. Even so, her shadowy target was difficult to make out. She managed though, and shadowed her target as he moved closer to the large bay door. Suddenly there was a screech of protesting metal. A circular section of the door fell away, and Naruto tumbled in after it. Izanagi was caught by surprise as Naruto caught him under the knees, appending him. The blonde kept his wits about him, ripping a pouch off Izanagi's belt that spilled scrolls all over the floor. Naruto tumbled across the floor, snatching a scroll edged in gold and silver as he went. He scrambled to his feet as Yujito landed beside him. Naruto glanced over at her as Asuma leapt through the hole he had made in the door. Got the scroll, Yujito-chan, let's get out of here. Oh, you need that scroll? Asuma walked over to a crimson scroll, slid his foot under it, and flipped it into his hand. We were sent for this one. Wait, said Naruto, you mean to tell me that this entire fight was all for nothing? Asuma lit a cigarette before replying. I guess so. I hate this mission. The two teams met up outside of the warehouse. Izanagi had left soon after the recovery of the scrolls, no longer seeing any reason to stick around. The shinobi had sustained a few minor injuries. Akana had been a bit dazed after taking a hard hit to the head during her fall, but recovered soon enough. Shikamura had twisted his knee and was leaning against Asuma for support. Chuji held an unconscious Ino. She had been brought in by Maitoku, wrapped in ninja wire. Well, Asuma said as he looked over his battered team, there's no permanent harm done. So no hard feelings, I guess. He looked over at Naruto. Tell me, does the name Uzumaki mean anything to you? The name struck a chord with Naruto, who only allowed a brief flash of uncertainty cross his face. Why would it? Asuma hid a grin of satisfaction at Naruto's phrasing. It was a question as much as it was a statement. Just wondering. Well, we should get going then. I have a feeling we'll meet again. The Konoha team leapt to the rooftops, and was soon lost to sight. Akana sighed as they disappeared. Well, I'm glad that this is over. Let's get back to the hotel. I don't know about you three, but I'm exhausted. Izanagi was whistling to himself as he walked along the path leading out of the city. He hadn't expected Konoha's team 10 to catch him there. But other than that, he was pleased with how things had turned out. He'd never held any interest in the scroll, it was merely bait to draw out the Araikis and give him an idea of their capabilities. There was a brief rustling in the bushes, and a hunched-over figure suddenly appeared next to Izanagi. Akasuna no Sasori, so you decided to track me down after all. The figure, now identified as Sasori, spoke in a raspy voice. You're late. I wasn't trying to keep you waiting. Sasori clearly didn't believe the claim, but decided to ignore it for now. You faced them? Of course. Izanagi continued to walk forward, not even looking at Sasori. I'm waiting. He was tempted to mention how much he hated waiting, but decided to avoid antagonizing the informant. For what? Sasori shot him a dark look. You said you'd steal that scroll in order to draw them out. And that you'd tell me what you learned. No, I said I'd draw them out so I could learn about them. I never said I'd share any of the information with you. You implied it. Anger was evident in the puppet master's tone. It's not my fault if you read too deeply into my words. Now, if you don't mind, I have better things to do than trade words with you. A heavy metal tail shot out from under Sasori's robes, its needle-like tip stopping a hair's breadth from Izanagi's throat. You forget who you're dealing with. Izanagi was forced to pull up short to avoid impaling himself on the tail's needle-like point. He shot Sasori a look of contempt, and his voice turned ugly. No, I've remembered exactly who I'm dealing with. Can you say the same? I may not stand a chance against you in combat, but don't think I haven't made arrangements in the event of my death. You kill me here and the leader of every ninja village worthy of the name will learn about Akatsuki. Your members may be powerful, but can you take on the whole world? Sasori's response was both a concession and a warning. Not yet. Then leave me the hell alone. Sasori came to a halt as Izanagi continued forward, disappearing around a bend in the path. He didn't even glance to the side as a figure rose from the ground. The new arrival was wearing a black cloak embroidered with red clouds, a match to Sasori's. A pair of what seemed to be leaves rose from his shoulders, partially obscuring his black and white face. Only after the figure fully rose from the ground did Sasori turn to face him. Zetsu, the name was spoken as a greeting. I was not expecting Izanagi to be so difficult. Zetsu replied in an odd dual-tone voice. His unwillingness to cooperate was not unanticipated by Pain-sama. I will get information on them personally. Why does Pain care so much about these two? They're not even Jinchuriki. He believes that their bloodline may be capable of controlling Bijou, much like Mokutan or the Sharingan. Even if that's not the case, he thinks that they may be able to act as a conduit for returning the Kyuubi and Nibi to this world. Rumor has it that they once housed the two. Rumors you uncovered, I presume. Zetsu didn't respond, but Sasori hadn't expected him to. Akatsuki's spy melted back into the ground while Sasori moved off to meet up with his partner. He was mildly impressed. Pain hadn't taken a personal interest in recruitment since he sought Deidara to replace Orochimaru. The Araikis were impressive, all right. But too much so, it seemed, for their own good. Kanehigakure. The Sandaime Hokage was sitting behind his desk as he listened to his son give a report on his team's latest mission. Quite frankly, he couldn't figure out why Asuma had insisted on giving this report in person. Sure, they had encountered and fought a foreign genin team. But such things were not unheard of, and there had been no significant injuries as a result. There was something that Asuma wasn't telling him yet, which meant he didn't want to say it in front of his genin. He leaned forward in his chair and waited for the report to be finished, then dismissed the genin. Once they left, he fixed his attention on his son. So tell me, what's so important that you needed to give this report to me in person? Sharp as ever, Pops. Asuma chuckled slightly, but his expression turned serious soon enough. One of the genin we encountered went by the name of Araiki Naruto. But that wasn't his given name. The kid was born as Uzumaki Naruto. That got Sarutobi's attention. You're sure? Yeah. He's the right age, blonde hair, blue eyes, and his Jounin sensei was Naruto's kidnapper. It's him, I know it. There are a few things I don't have figured out yet though. He paused a second before continuing. Naruto no longer holds the Kyuubi. There was no trace of demonic aura throughout the entire fight. He also had a Kekkei Genkai called Torimi Yujuki. The Sandaime leaned back in his chair, puffing on his pipe and thinking for a long moment. Asuma fidgeted a bit, then lit a cigarette. Smoke mingled in the air, and the Sandaime broke the silence. Tell me, Asuma, do you know how Kekkei Genkai are formed? Not a clue. But I have a feeling that you're about to tell me. Not many people know about this, but Bijou have an obscure and complex honor system. Even I know very little about it, but I do know this. Bijou hold themselves responsible for the misery their Jinchuriki experience. The honor code I mentioned compels them to compensate the Jinchuriki for that misery. Most of the time, the Bijou decides to bestow a Kekkei Genkai. How come I've never heard of this before? And if it's true, why aren't Jinchuriki viewed as a blessing instead of a curse? This village loves bloodline so much that they all but kiss the ground where Uchiha Sasuke walks. The process of creating a bloodline, even for something as powerful as a Bijou, is a rather slow process. It involves altering the host's very DNA. No small feat. Once the DNA is altered, it can take a long time for the bloodline to manifest. Tsunade told me it had something to do about cell replication. Whatever the reason, it is rare for the Jinchuriki himself to ever manifest the bloodline. The first person to use it would usually be his or her child. However, since Jinchuriki are so hated, many of them don't have children, and their Kekkei Genkai dies out before the world even knows of it. If they do have children, well, the bloodline is usually assumed to have been developed by the child or passed down by the other parent. People are foolish enough to fabricate their own reality if they so choose. But from what you told me, Naruto probably wouldn't have exhibited his bloodline for years. He's using it now, and so is that girl with him. Yujuto, I think her name was. That is curious. You mentioned that their bloodline was created by a sealing incident, and that Naruto no longer held the Kyuubi. A little over 10 years ago, Jiraiya was gathering information on a young Jinchuriki in Kumogakure, but the Jinchuriki seemed to vanish. It was soon thereafter that we began to hear whispers of a new bloodline in Kumogakure. They may have used some sort of Fuinjutsu ceremony to tap further into the Bijou's powers and form the bloodline more quickly. Is that even possible? I don't know. Fuinjutsu has never been my greatest strength, and such a ritual would be extremely complex. I would not even dare to attempt such a thing. I'll have to speak with Jiraiya about it next time he comes to the village. But the important thing is that the son of Namikaze Minato has managed to purge himself of the Kyuubi and develop a Kekkei Genkai. Asuma's cigarette fell to the floor as he stared in open-mouthed shock. The Sandaime allowed himself a small grin as he swiveled his chair around to peer through the window that overlooked Konoha. I wonder how the village will react to the news. Rhino Kuni. Naruto was hunched over a bowl of cereal, trying to clear the fog of sleep from his head. He wasn't having much success. That only caused him to become even more annoyed as Akana seemed to literally bounce across the room with a cheerful smile on her face. Someone seems to be having a good day. Of course, I'm finished dealing with Izanagi. That never fails to cheer me up. You'll probably have to deal with him again sometime. But not now. If you say so, I just can't wait to get back to Kumogakure. We're not going back to Kumo, at least not right away. What, why not? We've completed our mission. We're personally delivering the scroll to the daimyo. Messenger Hawk came in this morning with the request. How long is it going to take us to make it to the capital from here? About a day and a half, then 2 to make it back to Kumo. We'll leave at noon. Naruto sighed and went back to his breakfast. The trip to the capital was uneventful. None of the bandits that inhabited Rhino Kuni were stupid enough to attack a team of shinobi, so they made it to their destination without trouble. The team gained the summit of a small hill, earning their first view of the city. It took the genin's breath away. All 3 of them had spent most of their lives in Kumogakure. While it was a wealthy and prosperous village, it was also designed for militaristic purposes. To that end, there was very little in the way of fancy architecture and the like. The city was designed to be practical, meant to give every advantage to its own shinobi while hindering any invaders that managed to breach the walls. Sure, there were a few exceptions to this rule. Clan estates tended to be a bit more extravagant, but as a whole Kumogakure was not designed with aesthetics as a priority. The capital city of Rhino Kuni was different. It was also a city of great wealth. But unlike Kumogakure, they weren't afraid to flaunt it. Towers thrust their way into the sky, covered with intricate carvings. Statues dotted the landscape, memorials of the nation's past heroes, both civilian and shinobi alike. Even from a distance it was an awe-inspiring sight. One unlike any of the genin had previously seen. Akana gave a bemused glance in the direction of her genin team, all of whom were staring in awe at the vista before them. Impressive sight, isn't it? She continued on before they had a chance to respond. Well, come on. I'm sure the daimyo would like that scroll back soon. She walked down the slope towards the city, her genin falling in line behind her. They joined the throng of people moving through the gates and entered easily enough. Then they proceeded to walk through the streets at a civilian pace, much to the displeasure of Naruto and Yujito. It took them about half an hour to get close to the daimyo's stronghold. It was an impressive edifice, constructed entirely of gold and white marble. Glistening towers rose into the air, the gold along their sides creating the illusions of lightning bolts reaching towards the ground. Towards the center of the compound was an enormous building where the daimyo resided. It was the seat of power in Rhino Kuni, politically at least. They were stopped at the gate encircling the compound as a pair of guards crossed their halberds across the entry. Please state your names and the reason for your visit. I am Yorika Akana. This is my genin team, composed of Gifu Maitoku, Araiki Yujito, and Araiki Naruto. We have come at the daimyo's request to return a scroll stolen by Kazuhiko Izanagi. You've been expected. The daimyo has requested that you report to the secondary waiting room for his audience chamber. The 2 guards stepped smartly to the side and thumped the butt of their pikes into the ground in unison. It would have been missed by a casual observer, but the trained eyes of the shinobi caught the slight depression as pressure plates were forced downwards. A triggering device, they realized, as the gates slid aside. Akana took the lead, guiding her team through the compound's chaotic interior and arriving quickly at their destination. It was a small room, at least by the standards of the palace. The walls were covered in mosaics depicting prominent shinobi from Rhino Kuni's history. There were even a few predating Kumogakure. They drew the genin's attention the most as they had heard relatively little about them in the ninja academy. They were interrupted from their examinations by the sound of soft footfalls approaching from behind them. They spun around to see the lightning daimyo. He was a short man, not quite 5.5 feet tall. He was rail thin as well. But what he lacked in physical size he made up for in sheer presence. The man wore power around him like a cloak, impressing even the shinobi of Kumogakure who spent so much of their time around some of the deadliest individuals in the elemental nations. Team 4 fell to one knee and murmured respectfully, Daimyo-sama. He chuckled, a rich sound that rolled through the chamber. There's no need for that. His voice was full and melodic, at odds with his thin build. Rarely do I have the opportunity to meet with such distinguished shinobi aside from the Reikage himself. One of Kumogakure's most feared jounin, along with the 2 young bearers of Terimi Yujuki. Certainly this is a pleasant opportunity. Not to mention that you 4 have done me a great service. Of course. Akana reached behind her as she spoke, unsnapping a pouch belted at the small of her back. She withdrew the scroll and offered it to the daimyo. I should have remembered to offer it sooner, daimyo-sama. Nonsense, I only just arrived. There's no need for the honorific either, call me Daichi. As you wish, Daichi-san. Daichi stepped forward and took the scroll from Akana. I trust the four of you could stay for a bit. I would be delighted if you could attend a banquet I'm holding tonight. Of course. Wonderful, he stepped back and rapped sharply on the door frame. A moment later it slid open, revealing a servant who had apparently been standing in wait. Please escort these shinobi to the rooms I had prepared for them. The servant bowed, of course, daimyo-sama. He then turned to face Team 4, if you would follow me please. The servant led them out of the reception area and into the palace proper. Eventually, he reached an elaborate building and slid the door open for them. The rooms the daimyo had prepared are at the end of the hall. There is one for each of you. He straightened from his bow and left, leaving the shinobi to their own devices. After entering his room, Naruto was delighted to find that it contained a small, private onsen. He wasted no time in stripping out of his clothes and diving in, luxuriating in the feel of the warm water on his tired muscles. He had been immersed for about 10 minutes when he felt a brief surge of chakra along with a disturbance in the water. He nearly leapt out of the onsen in surprise when he saw Yujito sitting at the other side. What are you doing in here? Sitting in the onsen, of course. Why aren't you using yours? There's no one to talk to in there. He sighed in resignation. You realize I wasn't expecting you in here, right? I'm not wearing anything. She grinned wickedly and pointedly adjusted one of the straps of her swimsuit. You should have planned ahead then. Naruto sighed and sunk lower into the water. No one could say that dating Yujito got boring. So, what do you think about the daimyo? He seems nice enough. But I have to wonder how much of it's genuine, and how much is driven by politics. What do you mean? He's in charge of all of Rhino Kuni, with the exception of Kumogakure. More than any place else in this country, he needs to use diplomacy to remain on good terms with the village. He was right when he said Ka-san is one of the strongest ninja our village has. Her name may even be up for rakeage one day. Then you have to look at us. We're the wielders of Terimi Ujuki, and will almost certainly form a clan and gain a seat on the council. That we'll hold a great deal of influence in Kumogakure is almost a foregone conclusion. The daimyo will certainly want to ensure that he's on our good side. Are you sure you're just not reading too deeply into things? Do I have a choice? We are ninja after all. She slid around the edge of the onsen, stopping next to Naruto and resting her head on his shoulder. True enough. Naruto turned his head to gaze down at her. She had freed her hair from its usual ponytail for her dip in the onsen. Now it cascaded around her face, softening her features. He always enjoyed seeing her hair like this, rare opportunity that it was. He brushed aside a few of the bangs that were hanging in front of her eyes. Do I ever tell you how beautiful you look with your hair down? She snuggled in closer to him, a grin on her face. Not as much as I'd like. Naruto chuckled as he wrapped his arm around her. There's no pleasing you, is there? Of course there is, you just have to work for it. He tightened his arm, pulling her close. For you, Yujito-chan, I don't mind one bit. She squirmed a bit, getting comfortable. Then the couple just relaxed and enjoyed the other's presence. It was quite a while later that Yujito reluctantly wriggled her way free of Naruto's grip. The onsen's been nice, but I need to get ready for our banquet tonight. She brought her hands up and disappeared with a quick shunshin. After taking a moment to make sure she was gone, Naruto heaved himself out of the onsen as well. He had been close to Yujito for years, even before they started dating. But seeing each other naked, that was a line neither of them were ready to cross quite yet. Which was why he had been so surprised that she popped into the onsen to join him. He made a mental note to put a bathing suit on before he jumped into the next supposedly private onsen. He walked over to his pack and flipped it open. He hadn't brought any formal clothing with him, so his standard ninja attire would have to do. Though he could at least change into a fresh set. He dressed quickly, and slid open the door of his room whilst tightening the knot for his hideout. Maitoku was already outside waiting for him, but neither of the kunoichi were present. I suppose you can always trust women to make you wait. Indeed. Naruto grinned ruefully as he leaned back against the wall. He never could seem to manage to get Maitoku to say any more than what the boy considered necessary or polite. Ah well, his teammate had his heart in the right place at least. He may seem emotionless to the casual onlooker, but that was hardly the case. He was fiercely loyal to his friends and comrades, and Naruto knew he counted his teammates as both. His musings were interrupted by the sound of another door sliding open. He turned to see Akana emerge from her room. Yujuto emerged shortly thereafter, and the team exited the compound they were being housed at. A servant met them outside and motioned for them to follow him. They were led quickly through the compound and into the central building. A few quick turns through the corridors of the place, and they entered the dining hall. The room was enormous, bigger than some of the smaller houses Naruto had seen. It wasn't until Akana prodded him lightly in the back that Naruto realized he had stopped dead in his tracks. He quickly moved forward, catching up to their guide again. They were led up to the main table and seated at the side of the daimyo himself. Naruto grinned ruefully. That was definitely motivated by politics, and he'd likely spend a long dinner's worth of discussions on the subject. Ah well, at least the food looked good. Kanehigakure. Konoha was in an uproar. Word has spread through the streets like wildfire, and while the story had been convoluted, everybody seemed to know one thing. The Kyuubi Jinchuriki had been Namikaze Minato's son, and he was a Jinchuriki no more. The boy had finished what his father had started and vanquished the demon fox, gaining a Kekkei Genkai in the process. That was news that filled the village with joy. The news that the boy had been kidnapped by and raised in Kumogakure was decidedly less welcome. The village had immediately begun clamoring for the boy's return, although the reasons varied. There were many who assumed that the boy had to be a powerful shinobi if he had managed to vanquish the Kyuubi. Who wouldn't want an asset like that? The majority of the village were excited because they heard that he had a bloodline. Many of Konoha's citizens practically worshipped Kekkei Genkai and would seize any chance to add a new one to the village. Their desire was only increased by the loss they still felt from the Uchiha massacre a few years back. Finally, there were the villagers who wanted the boy back because of his parentage. The Yondaime was Konoha's greatest hero, and many of the villagers viewed his son as more a symbol than anything else. Whatever their reason, essentially all of Kanehigakure desired Naruto's return. Some of the less intelligent citizens wanted to start a war over the boy. There were also many who favored the idea of kidnapping him, the same as Kumo had done 10 years ago. Sarutobi knew better than to try either of those methods. The boy had been raised in Kumogakure, and likely didn't even remember Konoha. Naruto's knowledge of his home village was probably limited to what he had been told by the people of Kumogakure, and Sarutobi didn't doubt for a second that the Konoha's mistreatment of the boy had been brought up. Force wouldn't do, Naruto would have to be persuaded to return to Konoha. The upcoming Chunin exams would be a good opportunity to speak to him. He'd have to be sure to request Naruto's participation. Even with the exams, convincing Naruto to return to his homeland would be difficult. Although Kumogakure's reaction to the news that Naruto was the Yondaime's son might help. The Yondaime wasn't well liked in Kumogakure due to his actions in the Third Great Shinobi War, so there was no telling how that village would react to the news. It would become clear soon enough, Sarutobi supposed. A caravan had left to Kumogakure from a nearby trading village 2 days after the news broke. No doubt they would carry the news of Naruto's parentage to Kumo. The only question was how the village would react. Rhino Kuni. Naruto was getting bored. As he had expected from the beginning, the focus of the dinner was political talk. It was not a subject he enjoyed. He wasn't looking forward to the day when he'd have to deal with such subjects in Kumogakure. He leaned back, deciding to see if he could sense of the presence of the daimyo's guards. He started picking up chakra signatures and frowned. Daichi-san, how many of you 12 shinobi of lightning do you have posted nearby as guards? 4. There are another 4 patrolling the edges of the compound and 4 are off duty. Do you have any other shinobi visiting you here? No, why do you ask? You need to get out of here. All traces of mirth disappeared from the daimyo's face as he turned to face Naruto. Is there something wrong, Naruto-san? I sense 13 chakra signatures strong enough to belong to trained shinobi nearby. 3 are from the rest of my team, and the guards you have nearby counts for 4 more of them. That leaves 6 chakra signatures we can't explain. I don't think they're here to pay a friendly visit. Surely my guards would have noticed such a threat. Not necessarily. Our chakra sensing skills surpass just about anybody's. It's one of the side effects, so to speak, of our bloodline. Akana leaned forward in her seat. He's correct, Daichi-san. All shinobi unconsciously emit chakra, a diffusion effect of sorts. The chakra they release into the air is an interference whenever they try to sense other chakra signatures. Naruto and Yujuto emit much smaller amounts of chakra. If they concentrate, they can suppress it down to practically nothing. If they say that there are 6 unexplained chakra signatures nearby, I believe them. Very well, he climbed to his feet and turned to address the dining hall. Dinner with you all has been delightful this evening. Unfortunately, urgent business dictates that I must be elsewhere at this time. Please feel free to enjoy yourselves and remain until you are finished eating. He began walking away from the table, Team 4 falling in step behind him just in case. It wasn't long before a pair of shinobi landed in front of them. They were both dressed as Kumo Jounin, and Naruto noted the swath of cloth on their belts that denoted their position as one of the 12 shinobi of lightning. Daichi-san, we were unaware that you had any appointments tonight. I did not, but young Naruto-san has sensed some mysterious chakra signatures nearby. I thought it would be wise to err on the side of caution. Seeing the doubt written on the guards' faces, Akana decided to cut in. Torimi Yujuki increases their ability to sense chakra. Their skills in that regard exceed my own. Very well, we shall escort you to the bunker where we will be better able to protect the daimyo from threats. Our 2 nearby comrades will go to alert the rest of the guards. He spun on his heel and marched off. The other guard fell back a bit, bringing up the rear of the group. Naruto found himself walking to one side of the daimyo, alongside of Maitoku, while Akana and Yujito held down the other side. He quickly activated Ishiki no Torimu, allowing his enhanced senses to scan the area. They held their distance for a while, waiting until they had made their way outside. Then the gap began to close. Naruto and Yujito exchanged quick glances. They're coming. The lead guard turned around, a grimace on their face. Smart of them, I suppose, attacking before the rest of the guards can get here. You 4 ready for a fight? Naruto flashed a feral grin, one that sent shivers down the spines of even the hardened guards. A good shinobi always is. The guard drew a kunai. Damn kid, I'm glad you're on my side. Mentora no Torimu sprang to life around Naruto, and you haven't even seen anything yet. He jumped, intercepting a pair of shuriken that whizzed through the air. A quick spin had the shuriken glancing harmlessly off of his protective mantle of chakra. Naruto landed lightly on his feet. A fraction of a second later, 6 cloaked and hooded shinobi also landed, surrounding the daimyo and his guards. Akana shifted forward a half step. It's 6 on 6 right now. I'd like to keep a defensive perimeter around the daimyo, but that would leave at least one of us outnumbered. We're going to have to take them one-on-one. Try to end things quickly, but don't get careless. You can't let your opponent get past you. None of the shinobi around her so much as blinked at her proclamation. They had all reached the same conclusion. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Maitoku shifted slightly, sliding a foot forward and loosening his kodachi in their sheaths. It was as if it were an unspoken signal. All 6 of the shinobi blurred from sight as they sped towards each other. Naruto's opponent opened with a brutal punch to the face. It was blocked easily enough, but the man twisted his hand around to get a grip on Naruto's forearm. He gave a short spin and attempted to toss Naruto away, a mistake on his part. Naruto countered by simply digging his claws into the assassin's arm. The increased drag stole the momentum from the throw, and he landed upright a few feet from his opponent. Then there was the added benefit of slicing the assassin's arm open to the bone in 5 separate places. You're too careless, trying to grapple with me like that. Didn't you even notice that I had claws? The assassin grimaced. The kid was better than he had thought. Thankfully, he still had a few tricks of his own left to play. He charged once more. Naruto surged forward to meet him. At the last second, the assassin skipped to one side, then swept his foot out in a circular motion. A weight shot out from the man's ankle. It abruptly arced into a curve, its flight arrested by the ninja wire attached to it. Naruto didn't have time to react. The wire caught him around the ankles, entangling him and dropping him to the ground. The assassin grinned as he released the chakra he used to keep the other end of the wire fastened to his ankle. Then he sprinted towards the daimyo, drawing a kunai as he went. Naruto knew that the assassin had a clear shot at the daimyo. Everyone else was occupied. The kunai would need to be stopped cold too. He didn't have enough time to set up a parry, and if he tackled the man from behind, it would only drive him towards the daimyo. Naruto had no doubt that it was all the opportunity the assassin would need to kill his target. He only had one option. Even as he fell, Mentora no Torimu faded as Shirtai no Torimu rose to take its place. His claws severed the ninja wire before he even hit the ground, and he regained his feet in a fraction of a second. He had no choice, as he rushed past the assassin on all 4s. No choice as he rose to his feet in front of the man. No choice but to grit his teeth against the pain of the kunai that was now stabbing through his lung. Naruto knew that the assassin had a clear shot at the daimyo. Everyone else was occupied. He only had one option. Mentora no Torimu faded as Shirtai no Torimu rose to take its place. He had no choice, as he rushed past the assassin. No choice as he rose in front of him. No choice but to grit his teeth against the pain of the kunai meant for the daimyo that was now stabbing through his lung. The assassin pulled his knife free with a sharp jerk, splattering Naruto with his own blood. He fell to his knees, gasping vainly for breath through his collapsed lung. The assassin grinned and brought his knife down for the killing strike, only to be stopped by a swirling wall of wind. He strained against it, but had the kunai torn out of his hands. The wind rushed towards him, sweeping him off his feet and suspending him in a whirling cyclone. He closed his eyes and laughed. Nice try, Akana, But your use of genjutsu is well known. A chakra pulse swept across the battleground, and the assassin found himself standing on the ground again. Naruto, however, was lying at the feet of his mother 15 feet away. You're not about to catch me in a mind trick. I already have, and not the one you broke. After all, the first step to making an effective trap is to make your victim feel safe. She smirked. I can feel it. You're fluctuating your chakra, trying to see if you're still in a genjutsu. But I wouldn't be alerting you to it if you had a chance of escaping. Sure, you may be able to break it if I gave you a few more seconds. But your time is up. The assassin gave a small jump of surprise as he noticed his fingers start to twitch. Looking around, he noticed that the same thing was happening to all of his comrades. You're finished. The 6 assassins suddenly collapsed to the ground, finding themselves in full-blown seizures. The only reason they weren't screaming was because their throat and jaw muscles were clenched tight. Now die. The assassins gave one last jerk before falling still. The remaining shinobi of lightning landed just in time to see the smoke begin to drift out of the assassin's ears. Gifu stared with ill-concealed awe. Was that? I think so, muttered Yujito. Ninpu, Seishi Kenran no Reihenken. One of the daimyo's guards turned to look at them. What? Ninpu, Seishi Kenran no Reihenken, Akana interjected, my strongest genjutsu. Most people think that genjutsu is a ninja art that affects the sensory perception of the victim. They are mistaken. That definition classifies genjutsu via its end instead of its mean. Genjutsu is better defined as a technique in which the user controls the chakra in his or her target's mind. It is usually used to create false sensory perceptions, but I've figured out how to do more than that. The amount of time it takes for me to pull off the technique varies. These opponents were a bit subpar, so it didn't take me long. Didn't take long to do what? To elementally recompose the chakra in their brain. That's impossible. She turned to fix the guard with an incredulous stare. Impossible, it just happened right in front of you. I recomposed the chakra in their brain into lightning chakra. It started by affecting their nervous system. Gradually at first, a slight twitching of the extremities. But it expanded quickly enough, causing seizures. Then it fried their brains to a crisp, hence the smoke. It's the technique that made me a legend. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'd like to get some medical attention for my son. She knelt down and gently scooped Naruto into her arms. I've already been there, so you won't need to show me the way. She disappeared with a crackle of electricity, taking Naruto with her. The 12 shinobi of lightning glanced amongst each other. Well then, I guess we should get back to our posts. Oh hell no! The closest guard found himself pulled down until he was at eye level with Yujito. My boyfriend's in the hospital, and unlike Akana-sensei, I don't know where it is. You're going to take me there now. The shinobi of lightning Yujito had a hold of was a powerful ninja. He had been in life and death battles with more opponents than he cared to remember, some of them more powerful than Yujito was. But he got the feeling that he'd rather face down all of his past foes at once than experience the wrath of the kunoichi in front of him should he deny her demand. The daimyo's guard gulped, yes ma'am. The first thing Naruto noticed when he awoke was a throbbing, stabbing pain in the side of his chest. In some corner of his mind he dimly recalled getting stabbed there, so he supposed that the pain made sense. As his awareness began to return to him, he also noticed a tightness around his chest that seemed to indicate he was bandaged. He shifted slightly, causing his wound to throb sharply, which in turn caused a slight groan of pain. He heard a rustling of cloth as someone rushed over to his side. It was soon followed by a crushing hug that carefully avoided pressuring the wound on his chest. He cracked open his eyes in curiosity. It was impossible to make out the facial features of the person above him due to the silhouette against the ceiling lights, but the blonde ponytail hanging down gave him a pretty good clue. Yujito-chan? Yeah, her grip on him tightened a bit. How are you feeling? I was worried. I'm in a bit of pain, but overall I'm fine. It was just a stab to the lung. Just a stab to the lung? Her tone was incredulous. Just a stab to the lung. You idiot, that could have killed most people. We're not most people, Yujito-chan. We still have a healing factor left over from when we were Jinchuriki. The daimyo doesn't. Her gaze softened. I know, I understand why you did it. But that doesn't make it any less nerve-wracking. Heh, sorry, Yujito-chan. Of course you are. She grinned, and leaned in for a kiss. Ah, what a cute moment. Akana had to admit that she was impressed by the results of her entrance. She'd never seen somebody jump as high into the air from a prone position as Yujito just did. After landing, Yujito spun around, blushing furiously. Akana, don't sneak up on us like that. But then I'd miss out on all the fun. My life would be so dull. Is there a reason you came here, Ka-sen, or did you just feel like annoying me? Akana's grin softened. Of course there's a reason. You had me worried too. That and I came to give you the doctor's report. So how long until they release me? 1 day, 2? A week. What? A week? My healing factor would have me up and moving by then without medical help. What possible reason could they have for keeping me here for a week? The medic nin here have never encountered anyone with a healing factor like yours before. They want to keep you under observation just in case. You've got to be kidding me. I'll be fine by tomorrow, I'm certain of it. You know how well you heal, I'll give you that. But you haven't had the years of medical training that those medic nin have. I'm trusting their judgment on this. So if they say you have to stay under observation for a week, you're staying here for a week. Naruto opened his mouth to argue, but Akana cut him off. I'm not going to argue with you about this, Naruto. I'm telling you as both your mother and your Jounin sensei, you're staying here for a week. Naruto groaned and flopped backwards into the bed. He recognized when there was no arguing with her. Yes, Ka-san. It's nice to see that you're not being stubborn for a change. Well, I have some business to attend to after yesterday's mess. So I'll leave you two to continue enjoying each other's company. There was a crackle of electricity as Akana vanished, leaving the young Araikis alone once more. Yujito looked down at Naruto as though the entire thing had been his fault. You know, I really hate it when she does that. Well, what do you expect me to do about it? Think of something, she said as she climbed back onto the bed. As demanding as ever, I see. What was that? Nothing, Yujito-chan. She gave a contented sigh as she snuggled into him, then mumbled something that he was just barely able to make out. I thought so. Naruto soon got sick of his bed rest. His team visited him often enough, particularly Yujito, but remaining still for such an extended period of time was difficult for someone who was as energetic as he was. He was awake early on the 7th day, already dressed and stretching his muscles. He'd only been going a few minutes when the door cracked open and Yujito walked in. Figured you'd be up early today. You never were much for lying around. Naruto grunted a bit as he twisted his shoulders, stretching his back. Yeah, I still think that rest was unnecessary. I'm just glad that they're letting me get out of bed now. Akana-sensei says we're leaving at 10 in the morning? So you have a bit of time to stretch your legs and get some breakfast. It's going to be nice to finally get back to Kumo, isn't it? A wistful smile crept onto her face as she remembered the wild beauty of the untamed land surrounding her home village. Yeah, it sure is. It seemed that the entirety of Team 4 was anxious to return home. They traveled hard and fast, closing in on their home village half a day earlier than Akana had predicted. Soon enough they found themselves among a small stream of people making their way through the village gates. As was usual in Kumo, Naruto and Yujito found themselves to be the center of attention with countless glances in their direction and conversations pitched too low for them to hear. But there was something different this time. The looks usually contained a mixture of awe, confidence, hope, and similar feelings. They were reflections of the villagers' desire of the strength that Torimi Yujuki would give Kumogakure. But now Naruto could pick up new emotions behind those guarded glances. Some of the stares now contained anger, fear, resentment, emotions that hadn't been directed against the boy in 10 years. It was mildly unnerving. The oddities didn't end there either. They had barely been in the line for 2 minutes when a 4-man ANBU squad landed around them. One of the ANBU, supposedly the leader, turned to address Akana. Karaichi Akana, we have been ordered to escort you and your team to the Raikage's office upon your arrival. She frowned. Why would we need an escort? It's not like we don't know our way around the village. Is there an assassin hiding somewhere in there? We are not at liberty to discuss the situation with you. Raikage-sama wishes to inform you of it personally. Okay then, lead on I guess. Naruto and Yujito exchanged puzzled and nervous glances. Something was definitely out of the ordinary here. And neither blonde could shake the feeling that what they learned today was going to shape their lives for years to come. Doing their best to shake off the feeling, they leapt off to follow their ANBU escort. The ANBU set their pace to Maitoku's maximum speed, and they reached the Raikage Tower quickly. Their Team 4 was surprised once again. The usual practice was to enter through the lobby. Instead, the ANBU team led them straight through the open window. The Raikage didn't even look up as the 8 people landed in his office. I see the ANBU is as efficient as ever. You have my thanks and are dismissed. Hi Raikage-sama. There were 4 blurs as the ANBU squad left the room. The Raikage turned to look at a specific patch of wall. You guys too. A half-dozen ANBU emerged from various places of concealment, and left the room as well. Once the last of them had left, the Raikage raised his head to face the team. A caravan arrived from Ho no Kuni yesterday. They carried some rather interesting news. He studied their faces for a moment. It was Naruto who seemed to be the most anxious, most curious. It appeared that the boy had figured out that this was concerning him. There are rumors going around in Konohagakure. Rumors that the caravan brought to Kumogakure yesterday, and they've been spreading like wildfire. Apparently, the citizens of Konoha are saying that their Yondaime Hokage's son has vanquished the Kyuubi and gained a Kekkei Genkai in the process. Naruto stared in mute shock. You mean? Yes, according to Konoha, you are the son of their Yondaime Hokage. It's certainly feasible, if unexpected. You look remarkably similar to him, and it could explain why he chose to seal the Kyuubi inside of you. You think he sealed the Kyuubi into me because I was his son? If the Raikage was surprised by Naruto's outburst, he didn't show it. He did lean back in his chair and sigh. The Yondaime Hokage was a great enemy of Kumogakure. But there's no denying that he was a noble man who would do anything to save his village. Bijou are powerful beasts who can't be defeated by normal means, and the Kyuubi is the most powerful of them all. When the Kyuubi attacked, the Yondaime would have had no choice but to seal him away. I know all of that already. The Raikage continued on as though he hadn't heard Naruto's outburst. As I said earlier, the Yondaime was a noble man. He likely felt that he couldn't ask any parent to sacrifice their child when he was unwilling to do so himself. I can't imagine how hard of a decision that must have been for him. How has the village reacted to this news? Cutting straight to the heart of the matter. Not that I'd expect anything else from you, Akana. Reactions have been mixed. There are some citizens who could care less about Naruto's parentage. They only see him as a bearer of Torimu Yujuki and a great asset of this village. There are some who are excited, believing it to be further proof that Naruto will be an excellent shinobi. The majority of the village has taken one of those two stances. However, there are also a few who are less trusting of Naruto now. They tend to be those who lost loved ones to the Yondaime during the Third Great Shinobi War, or the shinobi who have more of an isolationist stance regarding foreign policy. Finally, there appears to be a very few people who now wish harm upon Naruto. So far we've encountered two, and they've both been arrested and detained. So overall, most of the village views him either the same, or more favorably than before. There are some, though, who are distrustful of you now. And a very few who might try to attack you. So just remember to be careful. Thank you for the information, Raikage-sama. Naruto's voice was quiet, subdued. I'll take my leave. Naruto, concern was evident in his mother's voice. Where are you going? Someplace to reflect on things. There was a crackle of electricity as Naruto disappeared from the room. The Raikage turned to look at his former student. How do you think he's going to take it? Akana sighed as she plopped down on a couch at the far end of the room. It'll be an adjustment for him. He was an orphan in Konoha, and he's been raised solely by me since I brought him to Kumogakure. He's never known a father figure before. I can't really predict how he's going to react. Both of the adults in the room turned to look at Yujito as they heard her open the office's door. Where are you going, Yujito? To talk to Naruto. He never told us where he went. I've been close to him for years, and spent more time with him when he's away from home than anybody. I don't need him to tell me where he went. Every major shinobi village has a memorial of sorts to their former kages. In Konohagakure, their faces were carved in the side of the cliff that overlooked the village. The other villages had methods that were more indicative of their respective elements. In Kirigakure, shinobi would use powerful, long-lasting jutsu to create lifelike water sculptures of the Mizukages that were adorned with their swords after their death. Iwagakure created massive tombs topped with the effigies of their past leaders. Sunigakure used tall, fluted columns engraved with images of the Kazekages. The ever-present wind was always blowing through them, and they were constructed so as to give off a mournful whistling sound. It was a fitting tribute for the leaders of their past. Kumogakure's memorial stood in a large park located near the center of the village. 8 massive columns rose 800 feet into the air, each engraved with the names of shinobi who died in service to their village. It was capped by an enormous dome of stained glass, reinforced with seals so as to allow it to survive the brutal weather that swept through the area. The past Raikage were depicted in the stained glass, backdropped against the stormy clouds that gave the village its name and looking down over the home they had sworn to protect with their lives. It was the first place Yujito went to look for him. Knowing that it was one of his favorite spots to think, and believing it to be especially fitting under the circumstances, she climbed towards a wide ledge situated 3/4 of the way up one of the columns. Her intuition was proved correct as she heard Naruto's voice float down towards her. I should have known that you'd find me, Yujito-chan. So how does it make you feel, knowing that the guy you're dating is the son of one of our village's greatest enemies? She clambered over the lip of the ledge, not really surprised that he had sensed her approach. It wasn't easy to hide your chakra signature while walking up a vertical surface, She glared down at him, reclining on the hard marble of the pillar. He looked about as deflated, as bereft of energy as she had ever seen him. You know, sometimes you're just an idiot. He continued to just lie there, seemingly oblivious to her harsh tone. You should know by now that I wouldn't see you as the son of the Yondaime Hokage, just like I never saw you as the bearer of Terimi Yujuki. Her tone softened. You should know by now that I see you for who you are, not what you are. I always have. He sat up and turned to face her, showing the haunted look in his eyes. But what about the rest of the village? I'm going to be hated by some of the people again, for something out of my control. I can't even remember my time in Konohagakure, but it sounds as though it was horrible. I don't want to have to go through that now. Weren't you listening? The Reikage said that those who are judging you negative because of the news are in the minority. Besides, people in this village have been judging you based off of what you are for years, and you've never let it go to your head. Why let it start now? He gave a small smile at that as she sat down in front of him. I guess you're right, Yujito-chan. You always seem to know what to say. She smirked as he wrapped his arms around her, pulling her in close and resting his head on her shoulder. Of course I do. Naruto took a deep breath, inhaling Yujito's scent and steeling himself. Yujito-chan. Yeah? Naruto paused a bit, hesitating. He could feel the raging torrent of emotions swirling within him. Today had already seen one major change happen in his life, one that he had no control over. And now he was about to cause another one. He couldn't help feeling quite a bit of trepidation. But at the same time, it just felt right. Yujito-chan, he said softly, I love you. He felt her stiffen, and for an instant worried about how she'd respond. But only for an instant. This was Yujito, and even if they'd only been dating for a few months, they'd known each other for as long as either of them could remember. He knew her almost as well as he knew himself, and he knew he had nothing to be worried about. She squirmed in his lap, turning around to face him. Their faces were only inches apart, and he could see the deep contentment that she felt. Naruto-kun, there was no uncertainty in her voice, not after she had just heard his confession. There was only calm, caring confidence. I love you too. Yujito-chan, she felt herself tumble backwards as Naruto bore her to the ground beneath him. They spent a long moment in each other's embrace, kissing, reveling in each other's presence, and the declaration they had just shared. Afterwards they continued to lie there in each other's arms. Naruto was smiling as he traced the symbols at the edge of Yujito's shirt. His earlier uncertainty was forgotten. A pity, Yujito murmured, that we aren't a few years older. She gave a playful grin as she moved her head to whisper in his ear, then we could have really had some fun. Naruto blushed a deep red as he thought of the implications of her statement. She smirked again as she climbed to her feet, and offered a hand to pull Naruto to his. Come on, we should get back. Akana has to be worried about you, Maitoku as well. Naruto grabbed the offered hand and let her pull him to his feet. Yeah, let's go. The couple leapt off the column, heading towards the city proper. They spent a little bit of time combing through Akana's usual haunts. She wasn't at any of them, and it wasn't until they checked back at the Reikage's office that they found her. He was mildly surprised. You're still here? I wasn't done yet. There was another important piece of information for me to tell you. Akana and I have been reminiscing while awaiting your return. Their stories are most impressive. So you're still here too, Maitoku? The news concerned our entire team. Of course I was going to say. Besides, hearing about Reikage-sama's exploits from his own mouth is quite an opportunity. I wouldn't want to waste it. Anyways, said the Reikage as he took a scroll from the top drawer of his desk. Your heritage isn't the only thing we heard about from Konohagakure. This is a letter from their Sandaime Hokage. He's requesting Naruto's participation in Konoha's upcoming Chunin exams. Akana slammed both hands down on the desk. Absolutely not. The Reikage sighed. Akana, I've decided to enroll Team 4 in the exams. Are you insane? This is obviously just some attempt to try to convince my son to stay in that village of theirs. Do you really have so little faith in me as to believe that I hadn't realized that? Your concern for Naruto is commendable. He should be a priority for you, both as his mother and his Jounin sensei. Unfortunately, I don't have the liberty of basing my decisions off of what is best for an individual shinobi. I need to worry about our village as a whole. Regardless of Konoha's reasons, this is the first step towards a friendly diplomatic relationship they've offered in 10 years. I cannot in good conscience turn it down. But they're just rookies. They could die, or, she paused for a second, and everyone in the room could sense the sheer desperation in her voice, or he could stay. Akana, I can understand your anxiety, but you're letting your emotions get in the way of your better judgment here. Team 4 is no ordinary genin team. Both Yujito and Naruto could take almost any of our Chunin in a one-on-one fight. When they fight side by side, they could probably take on most jounin. My Toku is impressive as well. He's extremely talented for a genin, and I believe him to be ready for these exams. No political situation could convince me to enter your team if I thought otherwise. As for Naruto defecting, you should know even better than I that we don't have to worry about that. He's never been fond of the hero worship he's received here. I doubt he'd be able to stand it if it wasn't for those of you who've actually gotten to know him. He wouldn't have any of that in Konoha. There's no way he'd stay there. He's right, Ka-san. They never convinced me to stay in Konoha. I may have been born there, but Kumogakure is my home. Besides, this is my chance to show Konoha what they missed out on. I wouldn't miss it for the word. Walking the streets of Kumogakure became a new experience for Naruto. The Reikage had been right, and many of the people still viewed him in a positive light. There were those, however, who did not. And they cast a bit of a pall over the streets that Naruto walked. He seemed to bear up under it well enough though. He had long ago perfected the trick of tuning out those who would judge him superficially. One of the more annoying consequences of his revealed heritage was an increase in fangirls, with whom he was forcibly polite. Some girls seemed starstruck by his revealed parentage, while others grew attracted to the aura of danger that they now imagined around him. Thankfully Yujito kept them at arm's length, physically if necessary. Still, Naruto mused as he walked down the street one night after a solo training session. It would be nice if something could get rid of his fangirl problem. He stopped suddenly, his instincts picking up something out of the ordinary. His eyes widened as he recognized the feel of the chakra being built up. Megurashi no Torimu activated as Naruto dove to the side, avoiding the lightning bolt that blasted a crater into the street where he had been standing. It seemed that the Reikage had not yet caught everybody who wished him harm. Naruto flipped over to the side, avoiding a blur that shot down at him from the rooftops. The assaulting shinobi wore one of the gray vests Kumo awarded to its shinobi upon achieving the rank of Chunin, meaning he was fighting either at Chunin or Jounin. Naruto skidded to a stop on all fours, and studied his assailant's body language carefully. Naruto predicted his opponent's next attack easily, and the strike before it was even thrown. The man was easy to read, likely a Chunin, but that didn't mean he wasn't dangerous. He was attacking with no regards for his own safety, and he seemed intent on killing or maiming the young Araiki. Naruto was reluctant to harm his attacker, as it would just encourage those who now looked down on him. Unfortunately, Naruto mused as he dodged another blow that left him at a severe disadvantage, as attacking with a non-lethal blow would open him up to a lethal counterattack. So taijutsu was out. His wind-based attacks weren't an option either. They were either highly lethal, or attacks that covered a wide area. Water jutsus weren't an option either, since there was no significant source of water around. Naruto made a note to remember to figure out a way to bypass that problem in the future. The final stage of his bloodline, however, that could work. Then Naruto stepped on a piece of fruit that had been knocked from a produce stall as the civilians had rushed to clear the area. His foot slid out from under him, forcing Naruto down onto one knee. He was able to avoid a kunai by twisting desperately to the side, but that left him open to what promised to be a rather brutal kick. He braced himself for the impact, but it never came. There was a blur to either side of Naruto, and his assailant suddenly found his arms pinned against a nearby wall by a pair of kumonin. A third stood over Naruto and offered a hand to help him to his feet. "Are you alright, Naruto-san?" Yeah, Naruto grabbed the proffered hand and let the shinobi pull him to his feet. "Thanks for the help, I didn't want to have to hurt him." "Who are you, by the way?" "Oh, that's not important. We're just a few concerned citizens who don't like to see young shinobi get assaulted in the streets, whether they have a bloodline or not. You won't have to worry about him anymore. We'll bring him to the detention center for you." "Thanks, that's rather considerate of you. It's good to know that we still have some shinobi with their heads screwed on straight. I'm just hoping that people settle down while I'm away for the Chunin exams. I wasn't aware that we were sending any teams to Konoha. I just found out about it a few days ago, and I'm a participant. It doesn't surprise me that you haven't heard about it." Naruto glanced at a clock on a nearby building. Looks like it's starting to get late. Ka-san should have dinner ready, so I should get going." "Very well, Naruto-san, I wouldn't want to make you late. Good luck at the Chunin exams." "Luck?" said Naruto as he started jogging down the streets. "I won't need it." Outside of Kumogakure, Akasuna no Sasori was standing in a clearing a few miles from Kumogakure. A few days ago he had defeated a trio of Chunin and placed a seal on the survivor. That seal was one of his best works. It would leave its bearer unaffected until a certain amount of data was gathered on a given subject, the lone exception being that it would erase the victim's memories of Sasori. Once sufficient information was gained, the seal activated, suppressing the person's consciousness and causing them to report the information to him. He had felt the seal break, and came to the clearing to await the Chunin's arrival. A few minutes later, two figures landed in the clearing. One of them was one of the shinobi who had come to Naruto's aid, the other was the unconscious body of his assailant. "It looks as though you have much to report," Sasori said. "You may begin." 3 days later, outside of Kanehigakure. A few days later, Team 4 rounded a bend in a path that led through the deep forest, finally bringing them in view of Kanehigakure's massive wooden gates. "Well," Akana said, "there you are. Kanehigakure, Naruto's first place of residence." It didn't escape the notice of any of her genin that she had stopped short of calling the village Naruto's home. Not that any of them minded. Naruto didn't consider his original village to have ever been a home. And from what they had heard of his treatment for the first 2 years of his life, the village wouldn't be worthy of the name anyway. Naruto adjusted how the straps of his pack rode on his shoulders as he regarded his birthplace. "Well, we may as well keep moving. I'm going to have to face the place sooner or later." Yujito was standing at his side, and gave his hand a reassuring squeeze as they started moving again. It was her way of reminding him that she was there supporting him, and he was grateful for it. The nice thing about the Chunin exams, mused the Chunin on gate duty, was that greeting genin teams was slightly more interesting than greeting the random merchants that tended to drift in and out of the village. His thoughts were seemingly proved correct as another team walked into view, wearing Kumogakure highlights. "Hey, Kotetsu, is that?" "Yeah," the other Chunin on guard duty cut Izumo off. "I think so. It looks like the Yandame's son has returned." The two Chunin waited rather anxiously for the team to draw close to the gate before addressing them. "Please provide your names and reason for visiting Kanehigakure." "I'm Karaichi Akana, Jounin sensei of Team 4. My genin team consists of Gifu Maitoku, Araiki Yujito, and Araiki Naruto. We are here because my team will be participating in the upcoming Chunin exams." Kotetsu took the papers Akana offered, giving them a cursory glance before waving the team through. No sooner had Team 4 passed the guard table than they heard excited murmurs begin behind them. Naruto sighed. It was going to be a long month. The first impression the genin had of Kanehigakure was that it was remarkably similar to Kumogakure. Many of the buildings had similar outward appearances, and there was a familiar mix of civilian and shinobi in the streets. As they walked through the streets, the genin concluded that there were two main differences between the villages, at least appearance-wise. Business areas, residential districts, and training areas were shifted around. And whereas Kanehigakure was constructed primarily of wood, the buildings in Kumogakure were built of stone to withstand the ever-present storms that swept the area. There was also a constant muttering from the people around them, as well as a constant stream of whispered namike-samas that seemed to flow from the lips of everyone around them. Naruto was used to this treatment from his time in Kumogakure, but it was much more blatant than it was back home. They had been walking the streets for less than 10 minutes in search of their hotel when a member of Konoha's ANBU landed in front of them. "Pardon the intrusion, Namike-san." "Araiki," Naruto interrupted. "Excuse me? My name is Araiki Naruto, not Namike's Naruto." The ANBU had no visible reaction to that statement, but a change of expression could have easily gone unnoticed behind his mask. "Very well, Araiki-san. Hokage-sama has requested that you come to his office to speak to him as soon as is possible." Akana sighed. "Fine, I guess we can go talk to the Hokage and then find our hotel." "Hokage-sama would like to speak to Naruto-san alone." Naruto narrowed his eyes slightly. The switch from surname to first name hadn't gone unnoticed. It appeared that the ANBU was perfectly content to emphasize Naruto's paternal connection to the village and inclined to overlook anything that distanced him from Konoha. "Anything the Hokage has to say to me likely applies to my team as well. Especially since my connection with them is more than just professional. Akana has adopted me as her son. Not to mention that Yujito-chan not only shares my bloodline but is my girlfriend as well." "The Hokage has wrecked." "I don't care if the Hokage wants to talk to me alone. He should be happy that I've agreed to talk to him in the first place. In case you've forgotten, I'm a shinobi of Kumogakure, not Kanehigakure. I owe no allegiance to the kage of your village, or of any village besides Kumo. So I'll say this one last time, I'll talk to the Hokage with my team or not at all." The ANBU hesitated for a moment. "Hokage-sama won't like this." "We've been over this before, I don't care whether he likes it or not." A sigh could be heard from behind the mask. "Fine, follow me." The ANBU spent the next 15 minutes trying to ignore Naruto's satisfied smirk as he led Team 4 to the Hokage's tower. The ANBU walked them into the lobby of the Hokage tower and went to speak to the secretary. "I've brought Team 4 of Kumogakure to speak with Hokage-sama." "Didn't he just want to speak with Namike-san?" "Don't remind me." "Whatever, there's nobody in the office now, so feel free to send them in." "Very well." The ANBU motioned for Team 4 to follow him as he climbed a set of stairs. He got off at the top floor and walked open to a set of double doors. "Hokage-sama," he called, "I have brought Naruto-san here to talk to you." He insisted on bringing his team with him. They waited for a few seconds before the Hokage's reply came. "Thank you, please send them in." The ANBU pushed the door open before stepping aside, leaving the way clear for Team 4 to pass through. Naruto paused for a second, a bit nervous at the prospect of meeting one of the world's most powerful shinobi. Yujito sensed his hesitation and took his hand in hers while stepping in close, lending him her support and earning a smile of gratitude from the young blonde. It prompted a smile from Akana as well. The two would walk through fire for each other, and she was happy beyond belief that Naruto had a girlfriend who was so supportive. Taking a deep breath, Naruto steeled himself and walked into the room to meet Konohagakure's legendary professor. Sarutobi had sent an ANBU member out to find Naruto as soon as he learned that the boy had entered the village, which didn't take long. Then he had waited anxiously, looking forward to seeing the boy for the first time in 10 years. He had calmed down when the door creaked open. Bringing his excitement under control, he was soon rewarded with the sight of Naruto entering his office walking hand in hand with a young blonde kunoichi. The pair was soon followed by the rest of their team, the blonde-haired female jounin who had kidnapped Naruto, and a somber-looking boy who appeared to be the final member of the Genin team. "Hokage-dano, I was told that you wished to speak to me." Sarutobi winced inwardly at the formal tone that Naruto used. There was no excitement, no warmth. The boy didn't seem happy to be back in Konohagakure in the least. "Naruto, you have no idea how happy it makes me to see you in Konohagakure once more." I wasn't exactly left with much choice in the matter. It's interesting, though, how I didn't hear from Konoha for 10 years. Even more so since the timing coincided almost perfectly with the village finding out that I no longer held the Kyuubi, and that I now possess a bloodline. Not to mention the details of my heritage. One might find ulterior motives behind this sudden interest. Sarutobi did well to hide his growing worry. This was not going as well as he had hoped. "Naruto, I've been part of a small group of people who've been trying to bring you back ever since you went missing. Unfortunately, we haven't had enough support from the rest of the village. But the situation has changed." "You mean you learned that I had a Kekkei Genkai instead of a demon? And how the villagers learned that I was the Yondaime Hokage's son?" Sarutobi had to hide another wince. "Yes, but that isn't the reason I want to bring you back. But it is the reason that the rest of Konohagakure does. You were banking on that, it's why you gave them all that information. Did you even stop to think about the consequences? Stop to think about how Kumogakure would react? I've been attacked because of your lack of discretion, assaulted on the streets of Kumogakure. They may have been judging me superficially, but they still viewed me in a positive light. Thankfully they still do, but you could have demonized me." That did cause Sarutobi to sigh. It appeared that his gamble to let Kumogakure know of Naruto's heritage had backfired. "I'm sorry for that, Naruto, I truly am. I didn't know that you were being treated so well in Kumogakure. I thought that they would have been more regulatory, more strict." He turned to glare at Akana. "I know well the lengths that Kumogakure would go to in order to obtain a bloodline. Insulting my mother doesn't help your cause, Hokage-dano. Nor does insulting the village where I was raised. Forgive me, the past animosity between our Kumogakure and Konohagakure is not something I should have brought up. That's not what's important here. The important thing is that Konoha will accept you now. Naruto, you can come home." "I will be coming home. In 5 weeks when the exams are done I'll be going back to Kumogakure. I have a mother there, a girlfriend, a team, and several instructors. There are people in Kumogakure who actually know me. No one in Konoha has seen me in 10 years. They only know what I am, and all they can do is judge me based off of superficial qualities. I get plenty of that at home. I won't have anybody who actually knows me here. I'm staying in Kumogakure, and there's nothing you can do to convince me otherwise." "Don't you think it's a little too early to make that decision?" "Not at all. But that doesn't mean we don't have anything to talk about. Your inheritance. You live up to your reputation as the professor, Hokage-dano. A shinobi doesn't get as old as I am without being able to read people, remember that. On to your inheritance, the Yondaime left a lot of money behind. He earned plenty with all of the S and SS class missions he took. He also left behind a fairly luxurious house in the village for you. But that's not what you're interested in, is it?" "No, it's not. What about the Hiraishin?" "I'm afraid that technique might be lost." "What do you mean lost?" The Hokage sighed as he climbed to his feet. He walked over and removed the Yondaime's portrait from the wall, revealing a plain section of wall marred only by a seal drawn in blood. The Yondaime was perhaps the greatest seal master the world has ever known. He had foreknowledge of the Kyuubi's arrival and prepared accordingly. He sealed everything he left behind for you with blood seals, but the levels of security he used varied. For the money and the house, he used some of the more basic blood seals that could be released by anybody who was of blood relation to him. But he was considerably more worried about the jutsus he left behind. He took a sample of your blood when he made this seal, and keyed it to your DNA. Variance due to the QB wasn't unanticipated, but he intended for you to claim your inheritance no later than your 16th birthday. Under normal circumstances, your DNA never would have changed this much. You can try, but I don't think your blood will be able to release the seal anymore. Naruto didn't comment as Megarashi no Torimu flared briefly upon his skin. He raised the claw to his fingertip, drawing a line of blood. He brought the bloodied finger down diagonally across the seal. It glowed slightly, but then reverted back to its original state. Sarutobi sighed. It appears that the Hiraishin is lost to this world. A pity. It's always unfortunate when such valuable knowledge is lost. Well, Hokage Dano, I'm afraid we must be going. We're still weary from several days of travel to get here and are looking forward to checking into our hotel and relaxing for a bit. Sarutobi sighed again. Very well, I won't keep you here any longer then. Though I do hope that you'll take a bit more time to consider your options. It's not too late to change your mind. No, it's not. But it's too late for you to change my mind. Goodbye, Hokage Dano. Naruto opened the door and turned to hold it for the rest of his team. He waited until they were all out of the room to close the door and turn around. That was when he noticed the new arrival. There was a man leaning against the wall opposite of the door. He was tall and thin. His height and mask covered most of his face, leaving only one eye and a bit of the face around it revealed. That combined with the man's silver hair allowed Naruto to recognize him at once. Hatake Kakashi, one of Konoha's most feared shinobi. Naruto was so preoccupied with Kakashi's sudden appearance that he almost missed another presence off to his side. He turned just in time to catch a glimpse of a brown-haired woman before he was enveloped in a crushing hug. Naruto, it's really you. It's been so long. I still haven't forgiven myself for failing you that day. Hi. Naruto was understandably a bit confused. Who are you? She stepped back, holding him at arm's length to get a look at him. Naruto was somewhat surprised to see traces of tears in her eyes. It seemed that she really was happy to see him. My name is Rin. I was your caretaker for 2 years. Then came that night. I didn't remember it at first, but Yamanaka Inoichi was able to help me regain my memories. I had taken you to see the parade as Kumogakure's ambassador entered Konoha to sign a peace treaty. I must have been followed back to the apartment. We weren't even there for 5 minutes before I was attacked. I couldn't stop her, I lost. And then she took you away. It's all my fault. You know, commented Yujito dryly, not everybody is upset that Naruto went to Kumogakure, including Naruto. That earned her a rather dirty look from Rin. A look that morphed into one of hatred, and was accompanied by a flare of killing intent, as she saw Akana standing behind her student. You, Rin spat as her hand inched towards her kunai holster. How dare you show your face here? She tensed her legs, preparing to spring when Naruto moved. He appeared suddenly behind the two kunoichi, with both his Megarishi and Shurtai no Torimu activated. Kakashi moved as well, appearing behind Rin and placing a restraining hand on her shoulder. You seem to be angry, Rin, but I would not take kindly to you attacking the woman that is both my mother and sensei. Besides, added Kakashi, our relation with Kumogakure are already strained. We can't afford to create an incident here. He turned to give an eye smile to Naruto and his team. You'll have to forgive Rin here. Yujito opened his mouth to retort, but decided against it when Akana elbowed her in the back. She's never quite forgiven herself for failing Naruto all those years ago. He fixed his stare on Akana. You've placed quite a burden on her. You're one to talk, Kakashi. How many widows lie alone at night because of Konoha's most feared assassin? True enough, I fulfill the missions I'm assigned just as you do. I've never kidnapped anybody, though. Enough of this, we could spend all day sniping back and forth at each other. I assume that it's no coincidence that you met up with us here. No, it's not. The yandame was our Jounin sensei. Rin has already mentioned that she was the boy's caretaker, and I visited him frequently before you took him to Kumo. We've been wondering how he's been doing all these years, and didn't want to miss the opportunity to see him. Your concern is appreciated, Kakashi-san. Unfortunately, this isn't the best time. As I've already told the Hokage, my team and I are weary from our journey. We'd really like to make it to our hotel. We can talk some other time, maybe. If Kakashi felt any disappointment, he didn't show it. Very well, I look forward to meeting you later. Until then, I suppose. Kakashi and Rin stayed still as Team 4 left. And Akana could feel Rin's eyes boring into her back until they turned the corner and were lost to her sight. Trying to avoid further incidents, Team 4 took to the rooftops as they traveled to their hotel. Thankfully, they didn't encounter anybody else and were able to make it to their hotel in a matter of minutes. They checked in without incident, and it was with great relief that they finally entered their room. No one could ever accuse Kumogakure of being frugal when it came to the Araikis, or their elite jounin like Akana. The room Team 4 found itself with was no exception. They were in a luxury hotel, one that was obviously meant to house important foreign dignitaries. It was also built with shinobi teams in mind. Team 4 found themselves in a 4-bedroom suite. There was a small kitchenette, which they discovered was stocked with basic foodstuffs. The common room was comfortably furnished and decorated with scenes from famous shinobi conflicts. The Kumonin were pleasantly surprised to see that the pictures seemed to focus on the exploits of all the shinobi villages instead of just emphasizing Konoha as one might expect. Of course, that was probably because the hotel housed foreign, not domestic, dignitaries. The bedrooms were nice too, and they dropped their bags off in their respective rooms before meeting in the common room. "Well," said Akana, "at least the trip hasn't been dull so far." "That would have been the preferable alternative," Naruto growled. He was sitting in the corner of a couch. Yujito was sprawled across the rest of the couch, resting her head on his lap. "It's even worse here than it is back home." "I'm not sure I'd say that," said Yujito. "They've been leaving me alone." "Your concern is touching." "I try." Akana decided to put an end to their bickering. They could keep going for quite a while if they wanted to. Back to the matter at hand, the Chunin exams don't start for 2 days. That means you're going to have another day in this village without anything to do. I won't try to confine you to the hotel or anything, but I don't think I have to remind you of the delicacy of the situation. So don't do anything stupid. "Hey, why are you staring at us when you say that?" "Because my Toku's a lot more level-headed than you are." "Your faith is touching." Akana grinned before mimicking Yujito's earlier words, "I try." Naruto groaned, "I'm going to bed." There was a crackle of electricity as he disappeared with a shunshin. Yujito's head plopped down onto the couch, and she turned to fix Akana with an annoyed stare. "Hey, you scared my pillow away." Akana grinned as she too headed for her room. "You've got a bunch more on your bed. Get some sleep." Yujito stuck her tongue out and disappeared in another swirl of electricity, using a shunshin just like Naruto had. Akana and Maitoku just shook their heads and went to their room via more conventional methods. Akana stopped dead when she opened her door though, suddenly understanding why Yujito had opted to use the shunshin. There wasn't a pillow left on Akana's bed, and she had a sneaking suspicion that she knew where to find them. Team 4's Jounin-sensei sighed. It was going to be a long month. Naruto and Yujito were up early the next morning. Not content to sit around the hotel doing nothing, they decided to wander around Konoha, from the rooftops of course. Naruto didn't feel like dealing with the villagers of Konoha at the moment. They did learn a few things. There were very few teams from the other major shinobi villages. They knew they were the only team from Kumo, and didn't see anybody from Kiri. They only managed to spot one team from IWA and had yet to see anybody from Suna. The couple came to a stop as they felt something. It was a strange chakra, they had only ever felt something similar to it once. That was the last time they had seen the Reikige's brother, a Jinchuriki. The man, whose name they couldn't quite remember, was impressed that they were able to sense the demonic chakra on him. Their bloodline appeared to help them there. Naruto turned towards Yujito. "Konoha's not supposed to have a Jinchuriki, are they?" "No, they're not. So either Kumo's intelligence is wrong, or one of the genin we're competing against has a bijou. Think we should take a look?" "Of course." The two shinobi took a moment to ascertain the direction of the chakra signature, then leapt off. They were almost there when Naruto stopped, looking down to the streets. Yujito followed his gaze, noticing a young boy being threatened by a Suna shinobi wearing a pair of cat-like pajamas. There was a purple-clad kunoichi standing next to him with a fan on her back. She seemed disinterested, along with a pale Konoha shinobi dressed in black who was standing nearby. As if in contrast, there was a pink-haired kunoichi who seemed to be pleading for the boy's release. There was one other Konoha shinobi nearby, a raven-haired boy in a blue shirt standing on the limb of a nearby tree. Naruto smirked. It was time for a little fun.